Just waiting for technology to catch up to us. Good to go. Okay, we're live. Call tonight's meeting to order, the last regular council meeting of 2023, December 11th, obviously. I've called the meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is always the agenda. Get a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor McFadden, I feel like an amendment is imminent.
Very astute. Yes, I'd like to move the adoption of the agenda with an amendment that bylaw 24/2023 be added to the agenda as item 5A for discussion.
Okay, so in the bylaw section, add we will replace 5A with the bylaw 24/2023. That's what you're suggesting. We'll move the existing bylaw to 5B. Council, everybody's clear on the amendment to the agenda? All right, all those in favor of the agenda? That carries. Thank you, Councillor McFadden. We have adoption of a previous minutes. We have 3A, September 25th, 2023 council meeting minutes. Councillor Federico?
I will not be voting in favor of this. I've already said my piece to a council email, basically just stating that when I brought this forward on September 11th, it was not done properly, which I accept. So when I came forward on the September 25th meeting, because there is no such thing as a notice of motion, it should have just been a notice of motion, which allowed me to put it on the floor without debate. But I am not about here to quibble over some minutes. It's not worth it for me to do so. There's a lot of inappropriate things that happened that evening, so I'm just going to leave it at that, but I will not be voting in favor of it.
I apologize. This is where I'm
Mr.
not gonna
Simmer.
sit here all night.
Yeah.
Give me my 2 minutes. It's been a year. I get 2 minutes. My 2 minutes is...
We're literally working our way to that,
I
Mr.
don't-
Simmer.
It doesn't matter. What you do to
It's
my
okay.
building, it's not my building. So moving that part forward and whatnot, I want to go home. Because
So do
sitting
we.
here listening to this, and that another thing on the agenda tonight is whistleblower and
Mr.
whatnot,
Simmer,
you fail.
you are actually-
You, or are you not?
We're not going to
Voting
vote on
tonight,
that.
are you going to vote for it? Is there anybody up here? There's 4 of you. You know that you can do it? Or is
Mr.
it
Simmer,
us
I'll
people?
recess the meeting here in 2 seconds.
Do whatever you want.
Yeah, okay. But
What are you doing?
you're the one holding up the meeting now.
Good. I got
Yeah.
the question and I'll
Okay.
leave. Answer my
I'll,
question.
meeting adjourned. We're in the 3A minutes. Councillor Flowers.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the council meetings from September 25th, 2023 as presented. And I want to thank administration for clearly outlining what happened that night because it was confusing to many people. And having that clearly outlined helped immensely.
Councillor Beed.
Yeah, so just what I understood from what happened and what really happened and what we think happened was actually the minutes were recorded exactly as it was recorded on the video. Is that correct, administration?
That's what the
Yes, that is
report
correct.
outlines.
Yeah. So yeah, I think for public record, it should be noted that the minutes were properly recorded as per the video. So thank you.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the minutes? Those opposed? Okay, those minutes carry. 3B, adoption of the previous minutes of the special meetings of November 14th, 15th, 21st, and 23rd, and 27th. Councillor Flowers.
Might as well keep going. Motion to adopt the minutes of November 14, 15, 21, 23 special meeting and November 27th, 2023 regular council meeting. Can we do them all
Yep.
at once?
Well, yeah, all together.
Yeah.
Okay, no questions. All those in favor of the minutes? Carried. Thank you. 5A, the new 5A. Is there someone from administration able to make a report?
Mr. Mayor, as per, if council wishes, you can proceed with approval this evening of bylaw 24/2003. I would note, based on the feedback from Mr. Simmer, he indicated the bylaw has been prepared as a DC bylaw, although in his submission to you this evening at the public hearing, he did indicate that, again, there would be an opportunity for the CG district But again, just I wanted to clarify for you that the bylaw before you has been prepared as a DC bylaw, including the use, it's CG with the garden center included as a permitted use, as that was the direction that we had proceeded with Mr. Simmer's sign-off. However, he is no longer the owner. We have not discussed with the owner, the new owner of the property, what their wishes in terms of the zoning, so that was our only caution in terms of proceeding this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hindman. Counselor McFadden.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I guess I had two questions. I appreciate the context, so maybe some advice from legal, with the ownership being perhaps just unclear at this point. If council makes this decision, what possible impacts could that have to the new owner, or what could be possible flags to that decision?
Through the chair to Councillor McFadden, we have no contact with the new owners at this point, so we would be proceeding without any of their input. So I would caution council on that. That's why we were recommending for this to be into January. Certainly, we appreciate the situation and Mr. Simmer's desire to have this rectified, but he is no longer the owner.
If I may add to that, in a general sense, I think the least impactful way to proceed in terms of zoning would be to use, I think, a general zoning that exists in the area would be most in line with that commercial district, which would mean not necessarily proceeding with the direct control as recommended, but instead considering the commercial general district. Did I get that right? I please will defer to Mr. Hindman in terms of the specifics there. But in terms of creating the least possible impact on the new landowner, that would be, I think, my recommendation that council would consider a general zoning rather than something specific.
Okay, so following up to that though, if council made the decision as outlined here that it was direct control, which essentially would mean that CG with the industrial business district would be allowed. So it would be simpler to have its CG as the rest of the neighborhood, but just to be consistent with the discussion points that have happened over the last month or so. I think what I'm trying to get to though is by making this decision, the DC, that is not in any way precluding the CG from being implemented on that site.
Yeah, that is correct. I think, again, this is speculative, as we've not had direct conversation with the new owner of the property, is that unusual zoning may not be desirable to a landowner just in a very general sense. So that's the only caution you're hearing from administration, but it does not preclude them from any of the land use rights consistent with the zoning of CG.
Okay. All right, those are my questions for right now. I just have to muse a moment on that information.
Counselor Nagel.
I just want to start something out procedurally. So administration is now raising a concern that we shouldn't vote in favor of this because we are unaware of who actually owns this property. Is that correct?
No, Councillor Nagel, we know who owns the property. We haven't had any communication with them.
Okay. So that is a little different. I understand the statement. But what I'm a little unclear on is if there's new information introduced into a discussion following a public hearing, doesn't that cause some sort of procedural issue? And if that is the case, how come we didn't just talk about this 5 minutes ago in the public hearing?
Well, I think Mr. Simmer did introduce that there was a new landowner, that he was no longer the owner. We just had not had an opportunity to speak with that landowner. So that's the only detail that was not clarified in the public hearing.
Yeah, like I'm not trying to create issues or like grill anybody here, but I feel like we may have actually accidentally just made a procedural mistake, or is that not the case? Are we allowed to now talk about this following the public hearing, or am I misunderstanding how this works?
Yeah, thank you. I don't believe there's any procedural issue, Councillor Nagel. Council now considers all information they heard in the public hearing as well as any information that administration would share with them, which is our normal course of practice. Following any public hearing, typically administration would come to council and say, in conjunction with all you've heard so far, including what you've heard in the public hearing, here is administration's recommendation. So we're now just bringing that forward to directly following the public hearing.
Okay, so then I guess I can trust that advice and set that issue aside. However, the issue that of not having communication with the landowner is something worth considering for me. And even though I want to put this thing to rest as quickly as possible, I don't see how I could possibly vote in favor of changing this land use when the only reason we were doing the land use change was to appease and try to help the previous landowner, but now we haven't talked to the last landowner, so I can't vote in favor of this thing until we hear from the new landowner. And not wanting to make an issue out of this or drag it on further, but that's just where I stand on the logic of it.
If I may, just perhaps in conjunction with this, procedurally speaking, possibly we could proceed with second reading and then third reading could be forwarded as well. So council could set a parameter under which we would interact with the new landowner, either with the proposed special district or by amending it to consider the general commercial district, under which circumstance we could interact with the new owner to ask their assessment prior to giving third reading, which could be deferred until a future regular meeting.
But would we need a second public hearing in order to consider the feedback of the new landowner?
Ms. Lowe, please.
If I can help, I think that it would depend, quite frankly, it depends on what the decision would be with respect to the bylaw. So currently, based on what we're hearing, if the deliberation is between whether or not it's a direct control CG with specific parameters or CG that exists within our land use bylaw, that would not be a significantly material enough change that would trigger another public hearing. And just to further on the comments with respect to new information being provided, generally speaking, what happens is you hear from the public at the public hearing and the administration responds to those comments and provides guidance at second and third. So that's generally what we're doing now, is that we've heard that there's a new owner. If council is giving consideration to giving second and third, it's just something that you may want to consider that we've not had an opportunity to confirm with the owner. So whether you proceeded with second and third, that bylaw, it was in play, and therefore it stands for the new owner if that's the case. But if council wants to give consideration to what the new owner of the property might want, ultimately that would be your decision to delay second and third.
Okay, so then I would raise the question with my colleagues, maybe we should delay second reading, but I'd leave it to hear what everybody else thinks.
Just for clarity, I think what I heard procedurally was we would give second reading but not carry, or not, sorry. For clarity, please, on the second
As
reading.
Mr. Derricotte indicated, you could give second reading this evening. However, if we were to come back and having heard from the new landowner, if they were to say they wanted the CG district instead of the direct control, you would thereafter have to rescind second reading because you can't amend a bylaw after second. So giving second reading, quite honestly, wouldn't move it much further along. If you ended up having to change it, it would just change that if the bylaw were to stand, based on discussions with the landowner, you would just be given third reading in January.
Yeah, thank you. And with that in mind, I would just happily defer to what Ms. Lowe stated there, that if council does wish to not proceed completely this evening, that not proceeding with second reading would appear to be the most expeditious course of action there.
Okay. Councillor Nagel, you're clear on that? We have two options. The one that's the easiest at this point is just to postpone second reading until next meeting. Okay, Councillor Flowers. Deputy Mayor.
I too think we should postpone it. I'm not hearing any benefits of rushing this through tonight, and we better just do it right and wait until January would be my thoughts.
Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my question, because I was thinking there was two routes forward which have been outlined, is one, we can postpone second, or we could vote on second. So, excuse my cough. So that would be my preference, actually, is that we postpone second until we can engage with the new owner. And that's just coming from the principle of respecting the ownership interest in this property, whether that be Mr. Simmer or the new owner. I think we need just to be consistent with that value. So then I just need some guidance legislatively. I would actually suggest that we just postpone second, and I'm not too sure how that's done at this point in the process.
Ms. Knight, please.
Thank you. Councillor McFadden, you could put a motion on the floor to postpone till the next meeting for second reading? Yeah?
So,
Well,
anyhow,
there is no motion on the floor right now either, so if that helps.
right, okay, so I could put a motion on the floor to postpone bylaw 24, 2023 to the first meeting in January. Is that
Correct.
appropriate?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would put that motion on the floor for my colleagues to deliberate on.
Okay. Councillor McFadden, or Fedeko, sorry?
Yeah, I agree. I would hate for us to vote on something that we're unaware of and perhaps end up back in the same situation that we just left with a new owner. I am sad, though, that unfortunately, due to obviously catastrophes within our own town, that Mr. Simmer's item got bumped. It should have been dealt with probably about a good month ago. And so I do feel for him and his family at the loss of their business. That is horrific, and but I don't want to make the same mistake twice. So I think we should hold off and do our due diligence by talking to the new owner.
Councillor Nagel?
Yes, I'm in favor of deferring the reading. My intention with this whole issue is just trying to come to a land use solution that is beneficial to the landowner, and now that we don't have feedback from the official landowner, it's difficult to do that. So I support deferring it.
Okay, so for clarity, motion to postpone second and third reading to the first meeting in January. Everybody's clear? Call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Moving to 5B. Bylaw 17, 2023, Rolling Trails Area Redevelopment Plan. Mr. Krasinski, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This presentation is for the reestablishment of a public hearing date for bylaw 17/23. The bylaw is the draft Rolling Trails Area Redevelopment Plan. The public hearing was originally set to occur on October 24, 2023. However, due to a local state of emergency that was declared at the time and the cancellation of council meeting that evening, the public hearing had to be postponed. Administration is looking to reset the public hearing date at this time. The Rolling Trails Area Redevelopment Plan area is located in the southwestern portion of Cochrane between western town boundary and Highway 22. It encompasses the existing Rolling Range Estates and Towers Trail communities equaling approximately 355 acres. The plan area was annexed into the town in 2004 as part of a large-scale annexation with Rocky View County. It is made up of 43 existing parcels, primarily acreage parcels, which range from approximately 2.5 to 20 acres in size. All the existing acreages are created through subdivisions granted by Rocky View County prior to the 2004 annexation into the town. The plan is proposing to include higher and lower density residential areas in addition to a mixed-use site at the entrance to the community off of Highway 22, as well as dedication of natural areas. Overall, the neighborhood densities would combine to hit a proposed target of 8 units per acre. At 8 units per acre, the proposed population plan area would be approximately 6,800 people. This slide just summarizes some next steps, which is advertisement of the public hearing, council's consideration of second reading, submission to the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board for review and acceptance, council's consideration of third reading, and then future submission of a neighborhood plan for consideration. Recommended action, administration recommends that council establish a public hearing for bylaw 17/2023 on Monday, January 22nd, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. to allow for all those who wish to speak to the application the ability to do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Councillor Reid?
Option 1, the council establish a public hearing for the bylaw 1723 on Monday, January 22nd at 5:30 p.m.
Okay. Councillor Nagel, your light's on. Do you have a
Question for clarification.
Yep. Okay.
At what stage in the planning process do residential neighborhoods have a discussion with regards to the infrastructure of their development levies would go towards, for example, operating intersections and roads?
Yeah, thank you for the question through the chair, and I'll look to Executive Director Drew Hyman to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that that stage would be looking at that as a portion of the neighborhood plan stage, not necessarily the area structure plan phase.
So in terms of this is just the preliminary plan for the area redevelopment plan, so it's the overarching policy, and Mr. Krasinski is correct. We'd look at refining that detail at the neighborhood plan stage. You would have high-level overview of the servicing and intersections and things like that, but more refined as we get into the neighborhood plan stage.
Yeah, I will be interested to hear more about that at future readings and following the public hearing. One thing I'm thinking though is once you've approved an area structure plan, it's very difficult to tell a landowner or developer they're not allowed to build that area structure plan. So in a sense, you're almost losing all of your bargaining power to discuss what sorts of infrastructure they would contribute towards. Is there some way you can talk about the infrastructure before the ASP is approved?
There is portions of like high-level infrastructure considerations as part of the area redevelopment plan. So are there specific ones in this case that you're looking to? Because I did hear that you were saying contributions to specific infrastructure. Are there ones that you would like to highlight specifically?
The entire road behind the neighborhood.
Towers Trail?
Towers Trail, and then the connection point at Towers, and I believe it is
Rolling Range Drive?
George Fox.
Oh, George Fox.
That really difficult intersection that currently exists and is very busy now with the addition of the neighborhoods up in the.
And Councillor Nagel, I think it's a great opportunity to get information through the public hearing, but certainly as we proceed to ask some of those questions about that infrastructure, because Towers Trail, George Fox intersection is going to be something that needs to be addressed, and what the plan is in the long term for this area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, not seeing any other questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the public hearing date? Carried. Thank you. Moving to 6, the business section, we have 6A, the Colt update. Welcome to the podium, I believe, for the first time.
I was going to say, if I may, just as Michelle makes her way up here, I'm not sure she has formally been introduced, so certainly be her first presentation here. But we are pleased to have Michelle as part of our community services team and serving as manager there. And included in her portfolio, of course, is Colt, which she will update you on. But I think about 2 months now, 3 months with the organization. So has been around a while, just her first time making a public appearance. So.
Well, welcome to the team and welcome to council chambers. It's, well, you see the environment in which we operate. Carry on. Oh, please.
I'll take a moment to recuse myself. Yes, this being a Colt topic, I've done so on all proceeding, and I'll go to
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I did not see your light. I apologize. I'll give you a moment. We'll come get you when we're complete.
The coffee's ready.
All right, Ms. DeLorme.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for having me this evening. Tonight, I'm here to follow up with a continuation of the October 16th Colt presentation. Administration is pleased to share an update and put forth a recommendation to evaluate the Colt service, ensuring a strategic and sustainable approach to future transit development. I can just switch the slide. How do I switch? Just. Okay. I will figure out the technology, sorry. So what do we know about Colt? In 2023, it is anticipated to have a record-breaking ridership, reflecting an impressive year-over-year surge of over 50%. However, despite the success, the present service delivery model is stretched thin, struggling to keep pace with the increasing user demand. Furthermore, the conclusion of the agreement with Southland for the additional 22 vehicle hours adds a layer of complexity to sustain current service levels by the end of 2024. Addressing Cochrane's challenging geography poses unique considerations, particularly in determining optimal stop locations and service frequency. As we delve into the specifics of Colt, understanding these dynamics is crucial for crafting strategies that optimize service efficiency and meet the evolving needs of the Cochrane community. Our transit system has grown substantially, averaging 200 to 300 riders daily, with a noteworthy achievement in August with reaching a record-breaking 469 riders in one day. These figures underscore the evident and sustained demand for transit services in Cochrane. Building on the 2022 baseline, the significant increases in 2023 reveal a continued trend of elevated ridership, marking a remarkable 45% increase year after year. Despite these successes, an additional 15 to 20% of unmet trips are still needing to be met, highlighting our community's increasing demand of transit services. This data underscores the critical need to address this growing demand, strategically ensuring the Colt transit system can effectively meet the evolving needs of Cochrane residents. In addressing the unique challenges of Cochrane's geography, strategic decisions on stop locations, frequency, and placement are imperative to optimize our transit system for current and future needs. As an initial step, administration has introduced a stop reduction plan to commence in 2024. This plan utilizes a comprehensive matrix evaluating ridership, social infrastructure, street code, accessibility, and time delays. Throughout Q1 and Q2 of 2024, the phased stop reduction plan aims to create efficiencies within the system while generating valuable data to support enhancing the Colt transit system. Currently, we have 149 stops, and this plan envisions to reduce the stops by 10% in early 2024 through a thorough evaluation happening in June of 2024. Key considerations include street code assessments encompassing driveway access, secondary and main routes, an evaluation of social infrastructure, including areas such as the FCSS, employment zones, high-density areas, seniors' homes, SLS, and Cochrane Ranch House. Additionally, the plan focuses on accessibility, emphasizing features like benches, ramps, and direct access to bus stops. The evaluation process also delves into time delays, exploring ways to relocate certain stops to mitigate delays and the overall transit experience. So the data on this screen provides you a high-level overview of the stop reduction plan. The dark orange is the number of stops that we will be closing in early 2024. The light orange are the number of stops that we will be evaluating and potentially making changes to in June of 2024. And the green stops we will not be touching in this process. So what that means is by early 2024, there will be 129 bus stops. Ride sharing will continue, and we will continue to evaluate the system. This will include merging stops, further stop reduction, and working with RideCo to increase our walk sheds of up to 400 meters. They're currently at 150 meters. We will also be working with RideCo to be providing options through the app. So if people or if riders cannot find their stops that they're looking for, we're hoping that RideCo can provide options for them. However, it is important to note that technical updates to the app can take time, and that won't be immediate. In light of the dynamic growth and evolving demands witnessed by the Colt system, administration recommends a strategic response. Our proposal is to engage a transit consultant and a third-party contractor to comprehensively evaluate the existing Colt data and formulate a new scalable transit system. The initiative is proposed to be funded up to a maximum of $100,000 from the general operating reserves. The advantages of this approach are multifaceted. Firstly, it allows for the creation of forecasted long-term scalable plan, enabling a phased implementation that aligns with the community's evolving needs. So this conceptual work plan provides you an idea with what the consultant would do and what the third-party contractor would do. So the consultant acts as a project manager for the creation of the new Colt system. They would complete all pre-strategy work and scoping of the strategy for the third-party contractor, identify and apply for funding opportunities that are available. The contractor will evaluate the Colt data and deliver a suggested long-range plan with a scalable approach on varying budget parameters. Evaluate a larger regional service integration and a creation of the system within the new development areas. The contractor will also outline transit service guidelines, including service types, policies, infrastructure needs, transit fares, service levels, and performance metrics. Knowing that the Colt system has been successful based on its current capacity, building a new Colt transit system would include community engagement, evaluation of the regional opportunities for commuters, defining a matrix of success of the COLT system, including ridership, service hours, and accessibility, a long-range scalable plan supporting future capital projects for infrastructure needs and life cycle planning. Conducting a comprehensive evaluation of the COLT system opens doors for the town of Cochrane to capitalize on existing provincial and federal grant opportunities. Designing a new scalable system positions us favorably for future funding, ensuring the sustained growth of COLT transit alongside our community. These current funding opportunities are just the beginning, with anticipation of additional releases in the coming years. By strategically aligning with these opportunities, we enhance our transit infrastructure and secure the financial backing crucial for its long-term sustainability. This planning project seamlessly integrates with the core pillars of Council's strategic plan, from elevating livability through accessible and sustainable transportation to fostering vibrant economy by connecting workers to job opportunities and attracting businesses. COLT plays a pivotal role. It serves as a connectivity linchpin, breaking down barriers and nurturing a well-integrated social fabric. Moreover, it reinforces identity, supports financial environmental stewardship, and enhances the built environment. This COLT system harmonizes seamlessly with the Connecting Cochrane 2017 plan, particularly in advancing the transit network under Section 6.4. The 2023 spring budget engagement underscores a strong call for forward-thinking urban planning. Particularly in public transit, a substantial 29% of Cochrane residents emphasize the need for long-term sustainability planning, while 23% prioritize strategic preparation for future growth. Notably, 16% advocate for an increased transit budget, recognizing the critical role public transportation plays in sustainable urban development. Equally significant is the insight of the 49% of residents support maintaining the current transit system, while 35% express a desire for decreased spending. Feedback from the RideCo app consistently highlights a shared sentiment among riders for an improved transit system. This collective input emphasizes the urgency of allocating planning funds to develop a comprehensive public transit plan, ensuring its sustainability, resilience, and alignment with the evolving needs and aspirations of the Cochrane community. So the planning project will be up to a maximum of $100,000, and we're asking for it to come from the general operating reserve. Council has 3 options for consideration. Option 1, direct administration to hire a transit consultant and a third-party contractor to evaluate and design a new scalable COLT system, funded up to a maximum of $100,000 from the general operating fund. Option 2, direct administration to come back with alternative options. Option 3, direct administration to continue operating the COLT system without review or adjustments. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your presentation. I think you nailed your first one.
Thank you.
That was awesome. Councillor Flowers, over to you.
I'd like to make the option 1 recommended action that council direct administration to hire a transit consultant and a third-party contractor to evaluate the current COLT data and design a new scalable COLT system to be funded up to a maximum of $100,000 from reserves. My question is, do you really think that's enough? It sounds like there's a lot of work to be done.
In conversation with a few different consultants, it seems like that will be enough for us to put together a full plan and looking at long-term options.
I'm really looking forward to hearing what happens because it's proven in the need and we need to improve it. So this is a good step in the right direction, and I hope that we're going to get 2 or 3 options to look at, not just one option.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Reid?
Yeah, my question actually was similar to Councillor Flowers' last comment, and that is, I understand the transit work plan would include different budget scenarios, which would fall under the umbrella of financial stewardship. Right from the beginning with COLT, my comment has been, I don't think we need COLT at any cost. I think it needs to be scalable for sure, but it needs to be within the budget that we can actually afford, and so I'm glad to see that that would be included. And so option 3 is not a viable one for me, and I would support the original one. I had one question of clarification and all the data that you presented. One of the ongoing concerns in the community seems to be that that students during student hours are displacing what might be other potential riders or users. Is that a fact? Do you know that?
Through the chair, so yes and no. The COLT system does not allow pickups or drop-offs in the morning or after school, so right as school is starting and right as school is ending, because there's a lot of congestion around the schools for the school buses. So there are COLT buses picking up students, but that is not when school is starting or when school is ending, because we are trying to reduce congestion around the schools, so we're not adding the COLT buses during those times. However, high school students, if they have a break in the middle of the day, they can book a COLT bus to be picked up. There's also another school, I don't actually remember the name of it, but it is down on Riverview Drive. It's there is a small school there, and there's students that do take the bus there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fedayko?
Thank you for the information. I'm just curious, I could be wrong. I thought we had a transit coordinator. Do we not have a transit coordinator? So now we're looking at a transit coordinator plus hiring a consultant plus a contractor?
So the transit consultant would act as a project manager. This is a pretty large project to be taking on, and the community connectivity advisor does oversee active transportation, micromobility, and COLT. And during this time, as I mentioned to the stop reduction plan and continual evaluation, the connectivity advisor is going to be feeding all of the data to the project manager so that they can focus on the project and not have to be doing this off the side of their desk.
So would the transit consultant become like a full-time worker for the town, or is this short-term position, or?
This would be a contracted piece that would be very short-term and only project-specific focused.
Okay, and I guess my only other question was, do we have a lot of the data? So from when Mr. LaFlèche was here, when he did an extensive amount of work, I mean, I can't even imagine the guy slept much when he dealt with transit, but do we still have all of his data that he brought forward, and that somebody's actually already doing some of that review, just so that we're not doubling up and starting from like basically scratch again? Absolutely, I've actually reviewed all of that data, and that's something that we're going to be using as we're creating this plan. Okay, thank you. I mean, it's one thing to spend $100,000 to get some options and some options placed in front of us. I think I can't really say much more about that until we actually see what's on the floor, because I do agree that eventually we have to figure out what transit's going to look like across the town. So happy to support that for right now.
Councillor Nagel?
This is kind of a tough one for me, because I would certainly like the information that's going to be I'd like to learn the information that is going to be produced by this contract. I think it'd be valuable information for the government as well as the people of Cochrane to know how much an enhanced transit system is going to cost. However, I don't see any possible way that a materially better transit system doesn't cost a lot of money. And for me, I don't see any way that I prioritize that expense over top of a number of other projects in our community, such as recreation, the Horse Creek Sports Park, additional ice surfaces, and those types of things. And so for me, even though I want the information, I think $100,000 is quite a bit to spend when I pretty much already know that I'm most likely not going to prioritize investing in that information in light of all the other priorities that we have in this town. So I'm unfortunately a no on this item.
Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, I think one of the things we've really learned with COLT and from the time it was introduced to now is that it really had pent-up demand. And what we're seeing is that the failures people are experiencing in the system are really coming about the fact is that we can't meet the demand of the system in the current model, which, as innovative as it is, just isn't able to flex and amend as much as we need it to. So I think this is a much needed investment in mapping out what the next steps are. And certainly the experience I'm hearing from around the community and even my own kids is the fixed routes, and that it needs to be more dependable. And so I see this as an investment in mapping out that strategy, and then we can decide on that from there. And just speaking to Councilor Nagel's point, I certainly applaud in this budget the investment, the capital investment on our recreation that's past due, and I appreciate and value that growing importance with my colleagues. But I think this is a much needed investment in being able to make smart decisions, so it certainly has my support. So anyhow, thank you very much, and congratulations on your first report. You did an excellent job so far. We'll see if somebody else makes it worse.
Yeah, thank you. My thoughts are similar to some of what have been shared around. One of the questions I was going to ask this evening, you answered in your presentation, and that is there anything we can do in the interim? It's one thing to hire a consultant and identify a lot of the upgrades that we all realize are necessary, well, most of us, I was hoping that there would be some things we could do in the interim, so I'm glad to see that. You've outlined them tonight, some of the, I won't go through them, but I was happy to see that. So we're not just sitting on our hands and doing nothing. We're actually trying to implement some changes to affect some upgrades on the streets for people who are utilizing transit. I'm going to echo some of what Deputy Mayor Flowers said this evening about, and just remind council that this was a pilot. It's been a long time since we embarked on this pilot project. And really at that time we were, as Councillor McFadden has suggested, looking to see if this was a need that existed in our community. We heard that it did. And I would suggest by the numbers that we're seeing that the need is real and that we have proven that we require transit in Cochrane. Now we have to upgrade it. We have to create a system that really parallels the needs of our community and the growth that we've seen in our community. So one of the other things I wanted to highlight too was the grant opportunities. And at the CMRB table, we were talking specifically about the, I believe it was the Canadian Permanent Transit Fund. Did I get that right? Yeah. Yep. So that those opportunities truly do exist. And I would really love to see some of the financial burdens that we're all talking about from Colt and expecting this large ballooning budget item to be offset by some of those grants. So I'm also excited that this project would look at some of those opportunities. And lastly, I just think that this is the necessary next step. We need the answers that we're all looking for. I think we've heard from many in the community that realize that the system we have now is, and I want to be cautious to say, it's not perfect. It's working to what we designed it to work to, and it's failing because of the amount of people wanting to get on the bus. Mm-hmm. So again, that is a different problem than a bus riding around or driving around with nobody on it. I mean, we've heard and seen the facts that that's actually not the case. I'm sure there's a bus at some point in the time of the day that is empty, and that's the one that hits social media. But the facts of RideCo cannot be argued with, that there are a number of Cochranites using that service every single day. So I think what we're up to now needs to be timely, and I just have a question around the timeliness of the report back, and I think you touched on it in your presentation, but I just want to highlight it one more time. How long till we're back in this room with some data from the consultant?
That's a great question, Mr. Mayor. We would like to be bringing back a report in Q3 of 2024 so that it is considered for the 2025 budget at any option that you consider.
So we're likely going to have another year of the existing with the tweaks of Colt. And there's more opportunities to tweak things along the way, or do we have to? Because I think going to have to work on some communication.
Yeah, so our plan right now is to actually start with some rider education. I think that riders, the on-demand piece, riders are assuming that it's almost like an Uber. However, this is public transit, so ride sharing is a big factor. And so you might get on the bus and then you have to go pick someone else up and then you get to your stop. And the education piece is where we're going to be starting in January of 2023. Then we are going to continue to work through the stop reduction plan, and we're going to continue to work through evaluating what those walk sheds look like. Right now we're trying to create looking at different communities and their policies around walk sheds and how far people are walking to get to their stops. As we're starting to move the stops, we're looking at how are people or sorry, how are the drivers getting into the communities, and then what is the efficiency of them needing to do a turnaround and do a major loop? So as we start moving the stops, we're going to be considering what would those stops look like in a fixed route, and how do we ensure that the stops are placed in an efficient manner for an on-demand system so that it can meet both demands and there's not a huge transition for riders as we potentially start to change the system. So we're trying to think of it strategically, but also make those changes that we can have a little more efficiency throughout the rest of 2024.
If I may just add one small piece to that, I think that we have, and Michelle noted this as she was just speaking, one of the big challenges is that we've used a lot of language around calling this an on-demand transit system when it's actually a dynamic routing transit system, which is not exactly the same. And so as part of that education is really trying to shift that language to clarify exactly what the expectations of the users might be. And I do think that that will, while it may not change some of the actual realities of engaging the system, it will, I think, help people with their expectations or their understanding of what the system is versus what it isn't.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm smiling to myself back here on your behalf, because having been here for 3 short months and the variety of initiatives that your portfolio covers, I'm impressed with the absorption rate of the transit system that you have displayed tonight. So thank you. Last thing I would add is I assume the consultant will check with other communities. Mayor Thorne and I from town of Okotoks have had conversations comparing transit systems. They kind of brought their system on at the same time. We're roughly the same size. Would just be interested in how they've navigated some of these problems. Or are they having the same problems in Okotoks? But
Yeah, we will.
As an example.
Yeah, we will definitely be looking at other communities.
Okay. Thank you. I don't see any other lights on for questions. I believe Councillor or Deputy Mayor Flowers, you put the motion on the floor. I will call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take a moment to get Councillor Wilson back. I'm gonna. Welcome back, Councillor Wilson. We are navigating our way through business. Creeping up on 6B, the expense policy and reporting. Mr. Derricott, you've got this one.
Thank you, Mayor Janung. I will be brief for 2 reasons. One is this has been in front of council a number of times, and 2, Michelle gave a great report. That's a little bit of a tough act to follow, so perhaps in this case, less will be more. Just as a note, this item last appeared in front of council at the committee meeting at the end of November, where there were 2 pieces of feedback that have been implemented into the policy. You'll see them there noted in the report. One being the opportunity for some transferring of training budget among council members, and the other being a requirement rather than an opportunity for council to report on various training pieces. Other than that, the policy remains as council sought in November. Hoping to get support from council to pass that, as is the recommended action. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Derricott. Less is more. Thank you. Councillor Nagel.
Was there any significance to the change in the language to cross out elected officials to only read council members instead? Does that mean that this is only applied to council but not to the mayor?
No, thank you. I think that that is in alignment with some of the language that we are using in other bylaws, and the mayor absolutely qualifies as an elected official as well, so it encompasses all members of council.
Yeah, I just because it doesn't say, like, it went from elected officials to council members.
Pardon me, he is a member of council as well, so it does not exclude the mayor from this policy.
I only wanted to ask just to double check, because there's like a dozen instances where this happens in the
That's purely a language cleanup to align with some of the language we've been using.
Okay, that's it for my questions. Thank you.
If I could, it also aligns with the language in the MGA.
Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the good work done on this. I just wanted some clarification. So the $6,500 is allocated to the training and development budget. But when it comes to, within that $6,500, is that also where, is there a set budget for mileage or to cover off the costs of constituent coffee meetings, those type of things? Is that within the $6,500 or is that an additional budget item somewhere?
Yes, thank you, Council. We do have sorry, Councillor McFadden, we do have a little bit of refinement to do there. So in general, this is intended to encompass training and development costs. So that would include expenses incurred traveling to and from courses, conferences, etc. Council does, generally speaking, have additional funding for more sundry items. That work is on the list of the budget task force to build that out and to specify that more clearly. Currently, it exists in a council as a whole. It's not individualized, and so that will be something we will be bringing forward in 2024, breaking out each councillor and specifying those additional items as well.
Okay, because I think currently people don't enjoy going to coffee meetings with me because I haven't been buying them coffee. So generally these great residents that want to meet with me buy me coffee. So it would be great to have like an established budget upon which I can feel safe to operate. So I appreciate that clarification. There was one piece I did want to, we talked about changing and I'd still like to change that. When it comes to the hotel rooms, essentially, I'd like to remove the first sentence that talks about, oh, here it is. When traveling to conferences, members should stay in designated conference hotels at the negotiated preferred rates. I certainly seen opportunities and have had that reported from other colleagues that if we could say that we don't have to stay at the designated conference hotels, because there's opportunities for me to find cheaper accommodations, whether that's be an Airbnb or bed and breakfast or non-designated conference hotels that would allow me to stretch that budget further. So I would actually like us to just remove that first sentence and D2 so that it would just be accommodation will be reimbursed for actual or other based upon single occupancy. Accommodation shall be neither extravagant or substandard, I think covers that off. Any thoughts on that or throw that to my colleagues?
Yeah,
but that would be the only, I think, amendment that I'm thinking of at this time.
Thank you, and certainly that at the deference of council, should they wish to see that adjusted. Administratively, the perspective as shared before is generally speaking, the conference rates produce an economical way to find accommodations. However, we also tried to craft that language that it was permissive and wasn't binding, as in you must stay at the designated rates, or sorry, the hotel and under those rates. And so as worded, I do believe that flexibility does exist and at the discretion of council if a language change would be desirable.
Okay, so should is not must.
That's correct.
Okay. Any thoughts to my colleagues?
Councillor Nagel, back to you.
I think if the should is not binding on the point that Councillor McFadden brought up, I think that's probably sufficient. But I was wondering if there's any appetite to include any costs associated with community engagement, whether it's renting getting coffee for people or cost of running a newsletter each month or anything like that. I think that's one of the most important functions in our role, and right now it's all done on our own dime. I don't think any of it's expensible.
Thank you. If I may, I think this is exactly along the same lines as Councillor McFadden described, in that it is work that we intend to do in 2024 in conjunction with the budget task force. This is, I think, the first step in defining some of those expenses that council may incur, and that there is additional opportunities to continue to refine that. I do think that that is a little bit of a separate question or a separate activity, but the point is well made that there's still work to be done there.
Councillor Nagel, you still have the floor if you wish.
Yeah, I was wondering, because like our term's half over, I was wondering instead of like waiting a year to do it, if we could just do it now, if there's any way to do that. Is there some little quick language we could put in here? Like for a certain, because it's like I have this gigantic training budget, which I pretty much never use, but I would definitely use it on a little bit of community engagement if I could.
Certainly, administration is open to the idea of creating. The idea is to permiss and to give parameters under the work that for the work that council would do. And so I don't think that we would be opposed to the suggestion there. The idea here is that council would have access to a certain set of funding for a certain set of purposes, and most importantly, that it would be well reported and clearly articulated as to how that was expended. And so, again, at council's discretion, if language of that nature was to be included or considered. There is, of course, an alternative for us to take this back should council want us to do more work on it before we pass it. That would be another option that council might consider.
You good? Okay. Councillor Federico?
Thank you. I wasn't at the last meeting. My son was sick, so I missed the discussion. I was just wondering, was there any discussion around when it talks about courses or education, things that a particular council member might take, that it is removed, that it's not sole discretion of mayor or possibly deputy mayor, just removing it altogether? Because as far as I know, and I believe it's a disclosure statement coming up, is that there'd be a written report to come forward anyways. And so I'm just wondering if it really, I don't know why we would have one person kind of deciding what somebody could take. It's really going to be up to each individual councillor to be able to defend it in the public eye.
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Federico. That is the intent of this current policy, is that the parameters are fairly, again, permissive, and that accountability then rests with the individual council member. The only parameter, I believe, placed around the courses is that they are related to the role and responsibilities of an elected official, and then it would be up to them to defend questions or answer questions that may arise on behalf of that.
So would be expected to put it forward for some sort of approval if it just be up to us?
That's correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
I prefer to leave the wording the way it is today, but have the task force look at it early next year. And I still would like to see us be able to order some benches and crosswalks and things that improve the community, along with spending for coffee. So the sooner we get at that work, the better. But I do like the way this is worded here.
Thank you. And I may add that any policy can be added, adjusted, evolved at any point in time. And so passing this tonight does not mean we can't look at it again early in the new year should there be additional items that come forward and are of interest. That remains an option also.
If I could, my apologies for interrupting, but with respect to the discussion around eligible costs for reimbursement for some of the regular council endeavors, Section 8 of the policy as presented does include hosting, and it covers off claims for reimbursement for reasonable costs of hosting business associates such as other council members locally or in travel status upon the submission of expense reports.
Councillor McFadden, and then I'll weigh in.
Yeah, I certainly, excuse me, support the direction that Councillor Nichols brought up. And I think, and the conversation otherwise is, if there's a separate budget or a separate policy that supports that council engagement piece, like I said, I've been struggling to understand what budget I have to actually activate those public engagement pieces, and whether it's, running a newsletter, somebody could do my spell checking for me, that'd be great. Or, those meetings or renting space or buying Timbits for the day, those type of things. So if, that could be a kind of in the first quarter, we could come back to kind of with some outlines of what that could be with an associated budget. That's always my flag. It's great to have a policy, but for my comfort level, it needs to have a policy and an associated budget. So I get squirrely when it's just a policy, but I don't really know where the money's coming from. So if those can be brought in early in the first quarter, I think I'd certainly support where Councilor Nago's going.
Yeah, thank you again, Councilor McFadden. Yeah, it's really important that the policy piece details how any allocated money might be spent, and then the budget obviously allocates those funds, and so those two pieces work together closely. There will be, I think, an opportunity, as mentioned here, to consider additional refinements to this policy. The main focus of this particular review was around training and development, et cetera, and so there are some additional pieces of this budget that didn't get a lot of a hard look, I'll say, and one would be, for example, the hosting. That has basically been left intact, but that may be a great opportunity to consider. It doesn't really specify public engagement or interaction with ratepayers, et cetera. And so I think it would be worthwhile to consider that specifically and give that a very good review as we have on the other pieces of this policy. In terms of the timing of this, we're very happy to engage that. And I think in conjunction with the work of the budget task force, where one of the elements is how we allocate funding to individual councillors versus the whole of council, will be a great time to, I think, cover some of that ground.
As for my comments, I don't have much to add other than I echo again what Deputy Mayor is saying, and I think I would encourage my colleagues to pass this tonight. It's an improvement over the existing policy, and we can tweak, as Mr. Derricott has outlined, is at our will. But I'd like sending it back to the Budget Task Force. We have other things to discuss early in 2024, so this can be on that agenda and come back to council with a set budget or some parameters around the expenses that some of my colleagues have outlined tonight. And then again, as Ms. Lowe has pointed out, I think we'll find some of those are already outlined in the policy, but then again, how much? So I would encourage everyone to support the new policy that's before us tonight, and at least go into 2024 with an improved expense policy and some reporting, which is what I think we were set out to do on the onset. And thank you, Councillor Wilson, for bringing this to the forefront. Don't see any other comments or questions. That's my slow, delayed response to late lights coming on. Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Mayor Janung, there was no motion on the floor.
There's no motion. Well, we're all in favor of someone's motion, it looks like, but whose is it? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I knew your light was going to come on at the
I better weigh in and put a motion on the floor. I move the council adopt 1108-02 elected officials remuneration and expense reimbursement policy as presented.
I just want to say I appreciate our ledge team. I firmly bumped into the guardrails there. Thank you for putting me back in the lane. Councillor Wilson, so moved. I'll call the question a second time. All those in favor? Still unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Derricott. Six C, organizational updates. I suggest maybe we'll take a break after this item if council is looking for that. Yep, okay. Good evening, Ms. Almond.
Good evening, Mayor and
6C.
Council. This evening, I am before you to respond to Councillor McFadden's notice of motion from September 25th of this year, requesting some information. So here we go. It's happening. Thank you. So the first slide here is speaking about the reportable metrics that have been discussed from the last meeting that I was here presenting and saying what kind of metrics we could bring forward to council. So just to run through those metrics that we can bring forward, we do a new hire survey, and now that we have done that survey over multiple months, we are able to have comparative data for you as well. We do extensive exit interview if somebody is leaving, and we can present that data and trends to council as well. Recruitment data, turnover statistics, whether involuntary or voluntary, workforce stability and trends so that council knows what's coming down the pipeline. Training initiatives, we do have a whole lot of training initiatives across the organization, and council had expressed an interest in knowing what kind of training initiatives we had. Current HR and organizational projects, so for example, our current project that we are finishing up now is our performance evaluation project being launched in January, so that would be something we'd be able to report on. And then the more nuanced things, which aren't really comparative data, but cultural updates, including our recognition program, our leadership development program, and general workforce updates. I had mentioned before that we kind of have what we call hot jobs if we have a position that we are struggling to recruit for, so we could give you a heads up on kind of what is happening out in the industry. And then, very importantly, health and safety updates and statistics. So the thing with HR metrics and organizational metrics, if we look at the next slide, is talking about timing. I had been asked if we could bring this back quarterly. An organization our size and the stability that we have, quarterly, I may not have much to bring to council. So I thought that this would be a happy middle ground to discuss. If we brought something in January to do an annual presentation, so like this January in 2024, I would speak about things that have happened in the previous year. So for example, we did our employment engagement survey, which happens every 2 years. We would only report on that every 2 years, but annually we would be able to tell you what kind of actions we've taken to show council that we actually have listened to the responses from staff and that we're doing something about that. Things like upcoming retirement statistics. If I was reporting those quarterly, our workforce isn't that aged that I'd have to do that every quarter. I'd have to maybe do that once a year for you. And then leaving that for 6 months and then bringing a 6-month presentation in July to include metrics to date for the year with comparative historical data. And then shifting that a little bit to 3 months later, doing 9-month presentation to council. The reason for that shorter time frame is the summer months we do have a lot more seasonal employees, so we would have more data then. And I also believe it would be super helpful to council to have that kind of an update just before budget deliberations. So that is the kind of cycle that I'm proposing to you tonight in response to Councillor McFadden's notice of motion, which means, sorry, that's not working for me, that there would be 2 recommendations I have, that commencing January 2024, Council approves of workforce metrics and information being presented to Council each year in January for the annual report, July for the 6-month report, and October for the 9-month report, or alternatively, Council provides administration with further direction. Happy to answer any questions or listen to any thoughts you may have.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillor McFadden, your notice of motion, lead us off.
Thank you very much, Ms. Solomon, for an excellent report. The intent of my notice of motion was really to help both council and the community kind of have an eyes on and understanding of the health of our organization and kind of the challenges and growth opportunities we might have within that. So my intent in asking for quarterly was more around regular and to give some sort of parameters for that. And so I really do appreciate the approach to this. I think getting an update summarizing the year before in January is excellent. Then an update, it looks like to be June, just before the summer break, to kind of how the first half of the year has been going makes sense to me. And then, yeah, an update just prior to heading into the budget process. So I think the timeline works really well and really fits in with the type of eyes-on that I was looking to get on the organization. So I really appreciate the report, and I appreciate being able to work with you and Mr. Darracott on kind of crafting what this needs to look like. So thank you very much for your work, and I ask my colleagues to support it.
Councillor Fedayko.
Yeah, thank you. I actually appreciate this. I think you've done a great job as to what should be brought back, and the fact that we all have a very clear timeline of when we're going to expect stuff as council, because I think that's super important. I feel like it's been a little bit lost over the last little while, maybe as things shuffle and the organization grows out, but I do appreciate this, and absolutely it has my support.
Councillor Reid.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. One was, first of all, I will comment that like my colleagues, I think this is a great step forward in terms of being able to keep council and the public informed. 2 questions were, one was the new hire survey results. When is that conducted? Is it like a 3, 6, 9, or is it just one time?
Through the chair to Councillor Reid, it is done one time at 3 months after a staff has been here for 3 months. It automatically generates. We can pull reports as soon as, I believe it's as soon as we have more than 4 answers to ensure confidentiality for the staff.
Okay, yeah, and the second question comes with a comment as well. That is to say that I love the caliber of what you've done, and it's an example of how effective and efficient our administration is, and so it's credit to you. My comment was, in terms of reporting, how time consuming is this? Is this something, like, I forget, do we use Dayforce or Yeah. Is this something you can build on Dayforce and get annual reports or regular reports?
Councillor Reid, this is where I get to show a little bit of excitement with the direction that council has given us and the finances that council has given us to grow our organisation a little bit. We have an HRIS position now within HR that is really helpful in this and is able to track this data for us. We didn't have that before. And yes, within Dayforce. And then McLean and Company, who does our employment engagement survey, they do the new hire surveys and they give us brilliant reports. So because it's so confidential, I just get the report. We don't track the metrics. So in terms of workload, no, this is the stuff that we love. We love to track this, and so it's not very time intensive for us at all. So thank you.
Great job. Thank you.
Councillor Nagel?
Yeah, great job on this so far. One thing I'd like to see included in the report as well is some information on what the current working from home policy is as opposed to working in office. If we could get that information as well, and in terms of what hours are being done where. I'm not sure how you would organize that, whether it's organizational wide or some departments are only in person and some departments are only work from home. I would just be kind of curious to hear all that information.
Okay. Through the Mayor to Councillor Nagel, I would say that would fall under organisational projects and updates, and absolutely I'd love to bring some information in my January report on what the town has run a pilot and now we've instituted, and give you some information on what that looks like for sure.
Great. Look forward to hearing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, not much to add other than I echo the comments of, and I've been saying that's 3 times I've used echo. There's an echo in here. Great job on the presentation. I think this is a good step for all the reasons everybody's outlined, but appreciate the timeliness of it and sets the expectations of council for 2024, and look forward to your January report.
If you accept my recommendation, or we can put a notice of motion on the floor.
I don't know. I'm going to see who put a motion on the floor first. I'm going to ask that this time for a motion.
I'm going to put a motion on the floor following Councillor Wilson's example, the last one. Option 1, that council provides administration with direction. Oh no, that's right. That's the wrong one.
Oh, you really took that different direction there, Councillor Reid.
Option 1, recommendation. Starting in January 2024, that council approve the process of workforce metrics, so long when information being presented to council each year in January for an annual report, and in July for a 6-month report, and in October for a 9-month report, with additional employment and engagement survey results being presented every 2 years.
Well done. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you,
Almond.
Council.
Council, let's take a 7-minute break, come back at 7:10. We are live then? Yeah, good to go. All right, thank you, guys. We'll call the meeting back to order. Moving into 6D, Envision Cochrane 2050. Policy goal direction. Not to steal any of the thunder from you, Mr. Krasinski, but we did talk about this at the Committee of the Whole a week ago. Should be fresh in everybody's mind. Now we're gonna get some direction.
Perfect. Yeah, we have just a little bit of an overview here, and we'll get right into it.
Excellent.
The purpose of this agenda is to complete the council engagement component of the first phase of engagement on Envision Cochrane 2050 to inform the project as it progresses from engagement through to draft policy development in 4 key areas. At last week's meeting, we introduced a draft vision statement and 3 policy alternatives for 4 areas in alignment with what we heard from the public and internal engagement. As discussed last week, our intent today is to provide an opportunity for you to provide feedback on a draft vision and policy scenarios introduced last week. Prior to this meeting, as part of the attachments to this report, you were provided with copies of the slides and of last week's meeting in a fillable form PDF in order to enable an opportunity for you to provide feedback in written form should you choose. Completion of the fillable form, while encouraged, is not required. All feedback, whether provided verbally or in writing, will be used to inform draft policy development. We do not intend to ask for a formal vote on each policy scenario, but rather feedback on preferred options and any other feedback you would like to provide. Should you choose to complete a fillable PDF, we ask that you complete the PDF and return it to administration via the executive assistant to the mayor and council, Jane Dangerfield, to our executive sponsor, Drew Hyman, no later than December 18, 2023, to avoid delays to the project. I'm going to pass it over to our partners, Rachel Dinelin and Sean Small from O2, who will facilitate this engagement to inform discussion. O2 has prepared a quick recap before we get into discussion. There will be a pause after each vision and policy scenario to council, for council to provide feedback. In the interest of time, we would ask the council try to limit discussion to 10 minutes per item. Thank you. Is there any questions before I hand it off to our partners at O2?
I think we got it. You want to get our feedback on each of the items, and we're going to stop after you present a little high-level recap of each for us to provide that feedback.
Absolutely. I'll hand it over to Rachel and Sean.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mark. And first of all, I'd like to start with thanking all of you. It is really generous of you to provide so much time to us, both last week to hear us go through the presentation, and then this week to provide your insights and feedback into the different scenarios we're presenting. Oh, I forget. There. Oops. Yeah, sorry. Oh, okay. Well, we'll do it this way. Great. So like Mark mentioned, I will provide a very brief overview of what we talked about last time and a bit of a refresh. And then we'll hit each of the 5 topics one at a time, where we'll present a little bit about it, summarizing last time, and then have 5 to 10 minutes of discussion with you before we move on to the next topic. So just a quick recap. This is, I think, our 4th time in front of council talking about the project. We first started with the brand and our plan for engagement, and then we went over the public feedback that we heard from the first phase of engagement, and then we spoke to you about the policy scenarios last week to provide an overview of where they came from and to enable this discussion today. So as we mentioned last week, we're just at the drafting of the policy scenario stage. We haven't started drafting the plan, so your direction will be very invaluable to us. The discussion and feedback and insight to help us start to put pen to paper and to craft the engagement for next year. So we'll provide a brief refresh on the 3 potential visions and 3 policy scenarios for each of the following: growth, land use, mobility, and housing. And after each topic, like I mentioned, we'll pause for you to discuss and provide any feedback or insights. It could be a preferred scenario or a new scenario or a combination and hybrid of what we presented. If there is consensus on the feedback, that's great. Then we have really clear direction to develop in the policy. If not, we will note all the opinions and insights, and then we'll still aim to balance those different interests in the policy and present that more detailed direction to you in the new year. So yeah, regardless, we'll return in the new year with more fleshed out content based on the discussion tonight. So to go into the scenarios, why do we choose these topics? Growth, mobility, land use, and housing are the key building blocks of our communities. They really show how it is shaped and are really critical to the quality of life of residents. And then the vision discussion helps inform all the other topics that the Envision 2050 plan will cover, including arts and culture, parks and recreation, and the like. So there's two streams. We're here with you tonight to discuss those vision, mobility, land use, growth, and housing. And then we'll take your insight, have more public conversation on more detail, and then write the plan. And for arts and culture, parks and recreation, economic development, and design, we'll talk with the public to get more insight on their priorities and goals, and then come back to you for direction on scenarios related to those topics, and then integrate those into a plan. So as we discuss each option, the Envision 2050 plan is really meant to reflect the insight from the public, administration needs, as well as your insight and feedback and discussion. And we're going to the public 3 times, first to discuss their vision and values, which provided a solid grounding for us to develop the scenarios from that you will see tonight. And then we'll go back in phase 2 to get more refined direction from the public on their priorities and feedback, and that'll enable us to provide direction. And then we'll present the draft plan to them in phase 3. And then once Envision 2050 is in place, then that will inform all further subject area planning and land use planning. So we'll start with topic 1, the vision. So for both the vision and the policy, we follow this process where step 1 is the public engagement, really understanding where they're coming from. We've also connected with Cochrane Planning Commission. Then we've had several workshops internally with different departments and talked to SLT, and then created refined scenarios and options. And we're here tonight for the second part of our engagement with you to get your feedback and insight and discussion. And then from there, we'll use that feedback to draft policy direction that we'll then confirm with you and then present publicly for response, refinement, and finalization. So this slide here has the vision-related comments from last week, as well as some overall project comments. The other comments we heard from last week are integrated in the specific topics that you'll see as we hit each of them. So we got the question of, will we consider where we want to be in 10 years? And this is in the context that the visions we've been discussing are 25-year and 50-year. And though the Envision 2050 plan is a long-term plan, it is very important to know what's most important in the short term as well, because that could help inform implementation actions and more immediate priorities. We also heard the question, could active lifestyle from the vision, one of the vision options, fit more with a suburban form? And an active lifestyle could be accommodated within a range of densities, and it's really about like the access to amenities and different pathway systems or recreational opportunities within the community. And then we heard a question, could economic hub fit more with an urbanized form? And it does more closely tie into the form with economic development as a focus, because it does rely on a concentration of population and customers to support that economic development lens. And we also heard that it's very important to reference Council's community vision throughout this project, and we have been, and we really appreciate that you have crafted a vision that really nicely transitions into this Envision 2050 document. And that, again, is really important to understand the fiscal impacts of the decisions that we're making through this work, and considering how we maintain our identity while allowing for change and growth. We also heard that we should provide more definition and flesh to some of the concepts in the draft visions, one of which is sustainability. The classic definition is meeting the needs of the present without compromising future generations to meet their own needs. But it's also important to keep in mind the triple bottom line sustainability, which looks at environmental health and integrity, social equity and cultural well-being, economic prosperity and fiscal responsibility. And I also added some resiliency criteria in there as well that are important to take into consideration, like critical infrastructure, ensuring it's robust and sustainable, the environment, both in terms of are we resilient to different environmental conditions like flooding, as well as keeping a clean and healthy environment, social, institutional resiliency, belonging, involvement, awareness, health and well-being of the community, and then of course, economic resiliency. We are also asked to add more definition to quality of life, and it's really dependent on the stability of the community, access to healthcare, environment, education, and infrastructure, as well as looking more specifically into the urban quality of life in our built communities. It's about physical and mobility, so access to housing, transit, sense of belonging, social and political quality of life, that there's low crime rates, civic participation, and the like, economic quality of life, and environmental quality of life as well. And then the last core concept that we were asked to provide a little bit more definition on is, of course, an active lifestyle, and this is something we heard a lot in the engagement. So when thinking of active living in the built environment, it's really about access to active mobility options, trees, parks, and green spaces, recreational facilities, jobs, schools, services within walking distance, again, safety, clean air in the environment, and access to nature. So as you can probably tell from all these definitions, these are not discrete concepts and they all have overlaps within them, but that's particularly related to natural protection and access to parks and spaces, mobility choice, and access to services. So the question for discussion is, what is your preferred vision? Is it a community of choice for a high quality of life and an active lifestyle? Is it an innovation and economic hub? Is it a sustainable community connected with nature? Would you like to combine them all, or do you have another option that you'd like to discuss? And with that, I'll pause here for discussion.
Okay, council, round one. Question one. It's like a game show. Councillor Nagel.
So are we gonna
You
like,
get your buzzer first.
are we gonna vote on one of these three outcomes?
No, I think you're just providing your feedback on which one, all your feedback, of each of our individual feedbacks, and that's gonna go into the O2's work and then come back to us in a document that we're gonna vote on later in the, did I capture that properly?
Yeah, exactly. We're here tonight for feedback and not a vote or a decision. And we're to take that feedback, and what we'll do is we'll flesh out a more concrete vision and policy from there and then come back to you with that.
Incorporating all the feedback you heard.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, well then I'll provide my feedback.
Okay.
Interestingly, I just told Councilor McFadden that all was not possible, and that was the wrong answer. And it seems that I'm wrong, but I wouldn't say all anyways. I would say 1 and 2, and I really want Cochrane to view itself more as like a complete community, not just to find ourselves within the context of Calgary and Rocky View County. And when we view ourselves as our own independent city, then I would say number 2 in the downtown core, and number 1 surrounding the downtown core.
Excellent.
Thank
Well
you.
done. Councillor McFadden.
I do enjoy irony. So Councillor Nagel and I had a brief chat where he talked me off the ledge of all, but now he's jumped on all and we're disagreeing on the split.
Not all. 2 of 3.
So, but I did want to say, I was saddened that I wasn't able to attend last week's presentation. I was under the weather, but I did make a point of watching the presentation, so it's not brand new to me. I did also want to share that I had some feedback from some friends in the community that had watched the presentation and very impressed with the presentation and the information that was provided. And I'll certainly be sharing this out to my contacts in the community. This was very well done, and also in context of the information that planning shared immediately thereafter on growth. So I think you're providing some very good data to make some good information from. So kudos to start with. So yeah, on the vision, I looked at this and I was like, I want pieces of all of these things. But at the end of the day, I think the one that speaks and resonates with me most firmly is number 3, is that it's a sustainable community connected with nature. And thank you again for the definition of sustainability. It's probably been a decade since that was common lingo, so what's old is new again. But I really felt that resonated with the most amount of residents within the community. There are certainly aspects that I do want, like I do want Cochrane to have aspects of innovation and an economic hub that's driving it, and we've talked about that amongst our colleagues, that we'd like to see if we can become a bit of a tech hub and to be able to drive that knowledge-based industry of some way here in our community. So to build that in a piece, and then I was very attracted to that active lifestyle, high quality of life, because one of my dreams, of course, is that Cochrane would be known as a trail hub. So with the Trans-Canada Trail coming through east to west, but also being able to connect north to south to Big Hill Springs and south perhaps all the way down to Bragg Creek. So, and we have such a passionate athletic community, people who want to be here and active. It is one of the draws of our community. So I keep veering back to the all, but at the end of the day, I think number 3 speaks to the core of what resonates with me, but I do want to kind of, feed in that we do have that economic engine of sorts, and that we really are helping our residents be active and to be healthy in that way. So that's my take on round 1.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Reid?
Yeah, thank you. Well, when you first presented, I thought that option 3 was a combination of 1 and 2. And I liked it then. And with the further definition you provided in terms of a sustainable community, I think that resonates with me. Not so much in terms of, well, I guess maybe in terms of where we are today, but I think in terms of 25 years and 50 years from now, that really resonates with me in terms of where we're going forward. And so, yeah, I prefer option 3 out of the 3 that are there.
Deputy Mayor?
I wasn't here, excuse me, last week either, but I watched most of it online. And when I read all these, I picked number 1. I felt that if we had number 1, we'd have it all, that everything could fall underneath some of those categories of quality of life, the nature and the economics. So I don't know, number 1 just spoke to me.
Councillor Padeco?
I'm more in line with number 3. I also think of where you see a lot of positivity online is always our beautiful landscape. It's pictures, it tells a story, and it is what truly attracts a lot of people to come to Cochrane to want to live here. Number 2, I also believe is important, except that I wanted to take it away from just looking at like examples of like the tech industry and really putting a focus on more industrial. I really do believe that going forward, we need to figure out a way to balance out our taxes that are going on in this community and move away from being so heavy on the residential side. And we're going to need to find ways to attract industry or bigger commercial to be able to balance that out.
Thanks.
Councillor Wilson?
When you don't have anything nice to say, I almost didn't say anything, but it's mom's apple pie and newborn babies and a nice flower bed. I think we need all 3 equally, and it's kind of a silly slide, I think. Obviously, all 3 are very important to our community.
Okay, I'll try to wrap this up. I picked all 3 as well. And the things that resonated with me was obviously healthy natural environment out of number 3. I loved the innovation and economic hub of number 2, and the note I made is I think really the focus should be on clean industry. And then on number 1, the active lifestyle and high quality of life. I think, as Councillor Wilson so eloquently put it, it's a no-brainer, all 3, all of the above. Councillor Nagel, out of nowhere.
Well, I'm a little worried that we're starting this conversation off by saying we just want to be everything, because I don't think it's possible. I think we need to make some intelligent decisions. Not intelligent, I don't mean like intelligent. We need to make deliberate decisions that are decisive, because you can't be everything. We cannot be an economic hub that attracts huge Fortune 500 companies, because that requires like a downtown city with great big skyscrapers. We cannot be both affordable and have big, beautiful homes with big parks that are spread out. Like, we can't just have everything unless we get prescriptive about like where it's going to happen. So I think we're actually being unfair to these fine folks if we just tell them, you go design us the perfect city that has parks and mansions and it's affordable and there's transit and it's carbon neutral and it has all the jobs and industry. I don't think that's...
You just nailed my vision.
I know, but if we I think we need to prioritize what it is we want to be in this conversation.
Thank you. I think it's a good point to make, but I think you're going to somehow take all of the above or none of the above and come back, and we're going to make those decisions at a later date of specifically what direction, what vision, what. So it's not here, but it's coming.
Okay.
I just wanted to assure Councillor Nagel that you will get a chance to make some very difficult and important decisions as part of this process.
It's a great point. Turning the page.
Great, thank you. So
to
what
growth.
to growth. And I'll pass you over to my colleague Sean, who will facilitate the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just a reminder as we go through all of the scenarios is we had scored them last week and showed you how we scored them against and rated them against the triple bottom line. So looking at social, environmental, and economic factors, as well as providing a rating system based on what we heard in phase 1 engagement. And a reminder that since all four of these topics coming up are interconnected, there will be a lot of the same insights that will apply across them, as well as there will be different pieces and options you could pick between them all as well. So on growth, we certainly heard a variety of opinions. However, the real question we have is focused more around the boundary. And so whether Cochrane is going to expand its boundary or keep it the same. We did have the question about looking at the fourth option. So we have not brought forward a fourth option based on, we think the fourth option is mixing and matching different components of the different scenarios that we have put forward, or even the different components across the different topic pieces as well would get you those alternative options. So the question for growth is, what is your growth policy goal? So scenario 1 was completing the planned growth within Cochrane's existing footprint, which is basically the keep doing what you're doing. Number 2 is focusing growth on, again, keeping the boundary as is, but then starting to really intensify within that boundary. And then scenario 3 is growing through a combination of some intensification, and that can be to different degrees, as well as then possible expansion. And I will open it up for discussion.
Councillor Reid, first to the buzzer.
So like the vision, for me, the number 3 seems to be a combination of 1 and 2. And so like vision, I thought number 3 was the appropriate answer, at least for me, in terms of being able to move forward.
Deputy Mayor?
I chose number 3 as well. It seemed to be a little bit of everything, and some of the things that we've been talking about in the past are built into that, so I liked it.
Councillor Nagel? All of the above?
No. Number 3, except with growth through intensification, I want us to be very cautious in our application of that. There was some discussion, I think, at our last meeting about infill development as like a policy of a lot of cities, where it's like they want X amount of growth to come from infill development, redevelopment of existing neighborhoods. I think overwhelmingly our existing neighborhoods are really quite nice. I don't want to set a target to, you know, subdivide these units and squeeze in more condos and duplexes and apartments, with the exception of this, in my opinion, the streets that are like immediately adjacent to the downtown core. I think those are logical places for infill development and intensification, but certainly wouldn't want to be, you know, going into, say, Riverview or Bow Meadows or Glen Eagles and then increasing density in those areas.
Thank you.
Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, and mine, the pick is 3 as well. With kind of like, yeah, an intensification, possible expansion, and in support of that possible expansion, annexation. But, and then following on the other information that was gleaned on last Monday, but with the focus to be on non-residential as opposed to annexing to allow for more residential. I understand long-term that there's a need for more residential space, but I really feel that certainly in the shorter term of the 25-50-year goal, that any annexation really needs to be for the focus of building up that non-residential base. So number 3 speaks to that with there. And what I did really like this point, and I think if we made a misstep perhaps in the past, is pacing our greenfield planning to help avoid growth bursts. I mean, we're in the middle of, it almost feels like a boom, an extended boom in Cochrane's residential numbers right now. But, and we've talked this one up before, kind of the need that as our residential development is happening, as a development will happen, more sequentially, more deliberate in the pacing of that, as opposed to what we've got right now is we kind of open the doors, and as long as the developers were meeting the policy directions, it feels like we're able to move ahead. So I think, in horse language, a little bit more half halts on our growth is where I would like to see. But overall, number 3, for sure, and of course, there with that big caveat, of course, is that regional collaboration piece. Sometimes it can be hard enough to get things done with just one level of government, and partnering with somebody else always slows things down, so we should probably start talking tomorrow. Anyhow, overall, number 3 on growth certainly does have my support, and then, but also respecting the current nature of some of our communities. So I know the East End community, there is a redevelopment plan that's been in place for probably about 20 years now, that does talk to that incremental intensification that Councillor Nagel had identified. If you can speak to one piece, just for clarification, I think sometimes we use the word, and we say build out, as if there's like an end goal to Cochrane, as if, you know, Cochrane's gonna be built out, we're gonna have, build to this parameters, have 70,000, and then that's it for what Cochrane's going to look like. But I don't know if you wanted to speak to, if one of our planners wanted to speak to the fact that Cochrane's never really gonna have an end goal of build out. Is that would be my understanding, is that we're going to continue to grow or not, depending on kind of economic factors, as opposed to lines drawn on a map. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, first I'll address so there is actually choice that council can make, and we do have examples of communities certainly that do make a choice, whether that is a willing choice on whether they don't want to grow anymore just for the sake of growth, or they're running into that issue based on servicing issues, whether that's water licenses or that. So Okotoks is an example of a town that does have limitations on it as far as how much it can grow at this point in time. So I would say from that standpoint, there is the choice. Now, from council's perspective, you're free to, based on the direction here tonight, or what you're giving us is looking at telling us that you see it right now, there is the option to work with Rocky View to look at adjusting the boundary as you go into the future. But I'm not sure if administration has.
Yeah, thank you for that. Through the mayor, Councilor McFadden, the use of the word build out was not intended to mean that there was an intended goal in mind in an ultimate state. Just really meant to communicate progress, and as we continue to grow, we're building out our boundaries and building out and to utilize the existing land that we have available for development. So it was not intended to mean an ultimate goal.
Okay. No, and I appreciate that, and also your language of there's no intended ultimate state, and I think that's just sometimes in our conversations that might not be clear as we've talked about growth in the past, because people understanding, you look at our annexed boundaries and we say that, you know, based on that, the population could be this. And then I do understand the restrictions of, you know, of water, wastewater, just the ability to provide the services to growth. I know in the Okotoks, they were limited and are still limited by water, but I believe they've got a solution coming online, and they're looking at managing their growth by more of a set target, I think, of so much growth a year. And these might be type of the conversations that Cochrane might want to have. Again, back to how we manage our growth, you know, through our documents, we're reining it where we want to go, but also I think a little bit of half halts would be a good approach. So,
thank you.
But big summary, number 3.
Councillor Federico.
Thanks. This is the one slide that kind of triggered me on that shorter term of looking at the 10 years versus the long term. So from a long-term perspective, it would be option 3, but from a short term, I'd be looking at option 1. And part of my reasoning behind that is rather than to bring on new communities, I'd rather see us build out what we already have. And I think that there's a big conversation out in the public that they want our infrastructure to start to catch up with where we are currently today. And I think going out to the public, and even if you say this is a 50-year vision, we go to the public and we say we're focusing on intensification and possible expansion. it then makes, and to Councillor Nagel's point, we have to be very, very careful on what that is actually looking out to the community, because the community is going to flip out in the way that they don't understand. We're just growing and now we're intensifying and we're growing even faster. So I think like this is that one where I say like my short-term goal would be to finish off some of the stuff that we already have there. Stop bringing new stuff online. It's not necessary at this point. Let's focus on getting caught up in our transportation, even some of our rec opportunities, rather than focusing and having a high focus on expanding more. And I do agree with Councillor McFadden that on the idea of balancing in out our tax base, right? And looking from a more, whether it's industry, commercial, but I don't think anybody wants to, right now, if you pulled 100 people sitting in Cochrane, they don't want to see more townhouses and other residential stuff come in. They want some diversion. So that's kind of my opinion.
Councillor Nagel?
Yeah, just to clarify, my thinking is very much in line with Councillor Federico. I'm not looking for major intensification opportunities in the next couple of years. This is just for the long-term plan, like 2050 sort of situation. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
I suppose number 3 speaks to me the most. I think there is a dissatisfaction in Cochrane with the way we have grown in the past, and not to reiterate everything from the committee of the whole topic, I guess, on this, which we went, I don't know, fairly deep into. I think the way that we need to grow is with that financial lens, and thank you for adding it to the new slide today, I see. And that's, I think it's a residents, perhaps unwittingly or actually just realizing that the way we've grown in the past has essentially made everybody a little bit poorer in town, and making sure that when we are growing, it's financially responsible, and therefore we can afford all these infrastructure things we keep talking about that we currently can't afford because of the way we've grown in the past. So that's the shift in growth I'd like to see. I think that comes with option 3, which obviously we need to keep growing. There's, to Councillor McFadden's point, there isn't an option to not grow. That would just mean that growth nodes would show up all around us in the surrounding area, and we would just lose a lot of our decision-making and autonomy, but we wouldn't really affect the change that we're looking for, which is to remain a small town. So I think option 3 is the only way to go on this topic.
Councillor Wilson, you stole a lot of what I wanted to say. So without using the word I used earlier, I would say I agree with Councillor Wilson. The only thing that I'm going to differ on is I kind of had a blend of 2 and 3, and I think it's for a lot of the same reasons that my colleagues have outlined, but focusing growth in new downtown, and then also looking at the expansion. But I had a note here about making room for future opportunities, and not always, I think all of us have touched on talking about growth as specific to population, but I think we need to be mindful that we're looking for non-residential, so all types of opportunities, I'll call them, instead of growth. So 2 and 3 for me. I think that's all of us on growth.
Thank you.
Intensification and land use.
So now moving on to the land use component. So definitely, again, we heard a mix of opinion on this one. Just to clarify as we get into the scenarios is density gradient can vary across all of the scenarios. And so it's not necessarily one scenario has to be high density. You can mix and match the density gradient. So the question here is, what is your preferred intensification and land use goal? So with the first one being focusing density and development downtown with smaller neighborhood community nodes. Scenario 2 is focusing on the downtown along major corridors and in larger neighborhood nodes. And then scenario 3 is focusing on the downtown and then having only a few larger nodes spread out Cochrane. And I'll pause for discussion on this one.
Council, 1, 2, 3. Go. Councillor Nagel.
I'll go first. I know it's probably not the majority opinion, but I actually support item 1.1, and that is just density in some specific areas and then actively discourage density in other areas. Something I've felt literally the entire time I've been a counselor is that there's not enough of a discussion going on with regards to how to have more lower density neighborhoods like what was developed in the 90s and early 2000s. And there's just been this drastic shift towards this new medium density and what I would call higher density development. And just the lower density options I feel have been just completely left behind like 15 years ago. And I think we should get back to planning neighborhoods like that.
Councillor McFadden?
So for this one, I picked number 2, with focusing our density downtown along the major corridors and in the larger neighborhood nodes. I just remember way back to the last time we drafted the MDP, there's a huge conversation about the need to protect the old downtown by driving that development into historical downtown, and kind of by policy, trying to make sure that the neighborhoods weren't competing. But I think we've migrated, we've evolved through that point where that I do want to protect the old downtown, and of course we've got the new downtown growth. But that I think we do have the capacity for that corridor densification along the highways, those type of things. So number 2 has my support.
Deputy Mayor?
I also picked number 2. I think the majority of the reason was because it got a 3 out of 3 for the triple bottom line scoring. And the fact that there's such a variety of mixed use in number 2.
Councillor Reid?
Just weigh in. Yeah, I picked number 2 again at your last presentation, not because of anything that I had thought of since then, but I did have a question about number 3 when your presentation occurred, but I ended up settling on number 2 as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Federico?
I like number 2, but I also like parts of number 3. And the reason that I say number 3 is because people clearly identify that this area is going to be dense. They already know going in. And I think some of the problems that I hear out in the community right now is that as we're changing and we're growing, what people expected to be there when they purchased their home or whatever that is, all of a sudden now there's changes happening. And they would have probably never purchased that home had they known that there was going to be a 6-story apartment building right in front of them, right? So I think that's where the number 3 kind of appeals to me, because it's already designated. You obviously know if you're going to live in XYZ area, you already know what to expect, rather than being maybe a little bit more surprised by 2. But I guess maybe when I look at 2, it's how we're prescribing it and just making sure that everybody knows exactly what's coming, and it's not morphing along the way, because I do feel that that's unfair to residents when we make changes and they have no idea as to what's going on.
I'm going to mix things up and go to Councillor Wilson first.
I suppose I'll agree with Councillor Nagel on number 1 being my preferred method. However, it would be with a massive caveat of, again, financially analyzing the way we do that. And that simply means that I agree that I'd like to have less dense residential on the outskirts, as we've talked about in our visioning plan, but I don't think it's appropriate for our denser center neighborhoods to be subsidizing the suburbs like we've done in the past almost totally. And that also includes non-residential. So I don't think our heavier dense non-residential should be subsidizing our larger big bucket non-residential. So it's doing that financial analysis and going, let's charge appropriately for our growth, but we can still pattern our community in a way that we want, which is density in the center and less dense on the outskirts, as we've identified in our visioning statement. So big caveat, I guess, but number 1.
Back to you, Councillor Nagel.
I just wanted to clarify on point 2. It seems like there's a lot of support for point 2. Is that of these 3 options the highest density option? Is option 2 to say to find opportunities for density everywhere?
No, in fact, you could have the same high density with all of these, from the standpoint that number 1, it's really all going into the downtown. Where number 2, you're starting to create those corridors. And so, as was mentioned, you would then start to see a bit more mixed use along those corridors. And number 3 is, again, to the point of, it's really focusing, again, it's now not just the downtown. You would have higher density areas also strategically located within town. And so you could have the same density with all three. It's just the way it is positioned in the town. Or certainly you could also, which comes into, when we take it back, we'll bring back a complete array of policies that you'll be able to see based on what we heard tonight. And so number two is, it's more about how that density and how a mix of land uses is positioned versus just high density in that particular example.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Reid?
Yeah, just one more comment to pick up on what Patrick was talking about, and in that you're taking notes. So I think if I understood what he was saying, coined it was, is just a value per acre is what he was worried about, or not worried about, but wanted to emphasize. And so if that could be recorded in your notes, if it wasn't last time, if you can coin it that way, I think that crystallizes what he was getting at, and I agree with.
Number two. Mobility choice.
So for this topic, for the most part, the public was providing very similar feedback. Mainly because when we talk about mobility, pretty well everyone wants as much mobility choice as possible. Whether we're talking either through vehicles, transit, pedestrian pathways, cycling, usually more is better. So for this particular question, we looked at what is your preferred mobility policy goal? And so scenario one here is continuing to prioritize vehicle movement. Scenario two is looking at improving the viability of active transportation and transit alongside vehicle movement. And number three is maximizing mobility choice. However, just to provide clarity, that doesn't mean at maximum cost necessarily. And so there's a way to maximize mobility choice, again, with still being financially responsible. And so I'll open up that with discussion.
Councillor Reid, first, the light.
Again, number three seemed to be a combination for me of 1 and 2, and seemed to summarize it all in one package. Again, that was my note from your last presentation, so I would go with option 3.
Councillor Federico?
Agree. Option 3 for looking at a long-term scenario of 50 years, I think that we have to be maximizing everything altogether. It's all of those choices, so.
3. Councillor Nagel?
I would pick number 2 because as I understand it, number 2 is just primarily for vehicles, and then the active modes of transportation such as bike paths and walkways and sidewalks and that type of thing. And I think that I worry that in the big picture of everything we deal with in our community, we will need to say no to something large that everybody wants. And for me, of everything on like the really, really, really want items in Cochrane, like I feel like transit's somewhere between need and want, like just on the edge. It's almost a need. The only reason I say it's not explicitly a need is because we seem to be able to get by largely without it now. But I think something is going to have to give somewhere, and transit is like the one thing that I think we should really have, but it might be the one that we have to say no to. And so that's why I picked number 2.
Councillor McFadden?
I'm thinking number 2 as well. I'm not, I still see that with a focus on, as it says, viability of active transportation and transit. So both those pieces have a piece to play in here. The big flag for me is the maximized mobility choice. I would love to have that if you could afford it. And that's one of the things I think we need to be aware of is we're trying to keep this affordable. We're trying to be able to afford these things. And so requiring regional collaboration, which can be difficult, but also significant investment. And so that significant investment also comes with significant repair, upkeep, and replacement costs. And so just from a financial lens, I think, I mean, if we had infinite taxpayer dollars or infinite free money that wasn't taxpayer dollars, 3, but to be responsible for taxpayer dollars long-term, I think number 2 is the way to go.
Deputy Mayor?
Okay, I chose number 3. It still talks about maximizing the road connectivity, but I think transit has been proven to be a need. There's many people that really need it. So I like the mobility choice and working on all at the same time. The world's changing and we need to be ready for it.
Councillor Wilson?
Number two, I don't think we can afford number 2 or 3 right now, but in a better future, I think we might be able to afford 2. So I'll go with that once we get our financial house better in order.
And I was number 3, and I pulled the line from scheduled bus route, or from number 2 on the scheduled bus routes with some on-demand service into number 3, just to mix the two, but I'm firmly in the 3 category. Turning the page to housing choice. Last topic.
So on housing, again, from just to recap, we heard a variety of comments from the public on housing choice. And for this one, would like to iterate that really we're focused on size and form here. And so again, with different housing choices, you can have different density policies. And so just because you're providing a lot of housing choice doesn't mean you're automatically going to the maximum density everywhere. You can have lots of choice with keeping a reasonable density or even with low density across the town as a whole. And so the question on this one was, what is your preferred housing policy goal? So number 1 is minimal housing diversity, sticking with primarily lower density forms such as single family, semi-detached. Number 2 is focusing housing diversity on low and moderate density options, so allowing a bit more into getting into that low rise built form. And then number 3 is maximizing housing diversity. And so some comments we heard last time was also letting the market come into play, where you would have then, depending on where the market was determining, you would have then different housing choices provided within the town of Cochrane. And I will pause there for discussion.
Councillor Wilson, buzzer first.
I figured I'd surprise you and change things up here. I like number 3, possibly counterintuitively. I really like what you just said there about diversity not necessarily equating to density, and I think that's totally true. That's a policy level decision, density, I think. The diversity of housing is something that we've lacked in the community to a great deal, and I think it's something that we are changing into to maximum benefit of people. And then I also liked your comment about I think I said this last time, I like markets and not government prescriptions, and so I think the retail market should tell us more about what consumers want and not us deciding what we want to see in the communities. That's I think that's overbearing government to decide what way people should be living. So this is the only one that I chose number 3 on, I think.
Way to lead us off. Deputy Mayor Flowers.
I also chose number 3, and I agree with everything that Councillor Wilson just said.
All right. Councillor Badeko?
I was between 2 and 3. I mean, probably more geared towards 3, but I do like the fact that you explained that it's not just about density, but diversity. One thing that we really do lack out there is just places to be able to age in place, right? We don't have, we have some bungalows, but they're generally very expensive. We don't have, I mean, we're starting to get some apartments come on board, which will definitely help. But I'd like us to look at maybe different ideas of kind of housing communities, whether or not that's like a tiny home community built within a larger community, just to be able to offer affordability, but choices for people that don't include 4 flights of stairs on every single level. Like, so that's kind of where I would like to go, is just some more creativity, and maybe that's like stacked bungalows or something along that line, that we're just offering more choice for people.
Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, I support number 3 as well. I think, big picture, we've got a housing crunch that isn't going to end at a national or a provincial level anytime soon. I was in a meeting just the other week where they're forecasting 10 to 15 year labor crunch, and demand in the province. And so we're going to be attracting those workers. They need places to live. And so I think Cochrane really needs to make sure that we're providing that full range of housing cycles so for everybody in whatever economic space they're at, or whatever age and whatever demographic they're at, wherever they need to be. And really appealing here, of course, is that most age-in-place opportunities, and of course the talent attraction, which will then in turn be able to support our economic development. So I think number 3 is going to give Cochrane the most amount of opportunities to flex and adapt to the challenges of the future.
Councillor Nagel?
I will strategically say number 1, because I feel that the large single detached homes and low density neighborhoods need a champion. And I think there is a substantial portion of our community's population that does not want to see a lot of highly urbanized development in Cochrane. And I often say that I would support density in the core of the town, but that's always just been my compromise because I know nobody wants to go to low density. But the truth is, if you told me every new development in Cochrane was only going to be single detached, low density housing, I would vote in favor of it tomorrow. So I'm number 1.
Councillor Reid?
Keep it short. I'm with number 3. I support number 3.
I'll double down on number 3, cancel out Councillor Nagel's number 1. I'm just kidding. Councillor Wilson, out of nowhere for closing remarks on housing choice?
Yeah, there was one other part I didn't include in number 3, and that's the affordable housing topic that we got into during budget, and all we've been talking about a fair amount recently. And I think that's the market solution that's much more powerful and realistic than any government solutions that I see come before me. I think that's the most powerful way to attack that topic, and that's increasing our housing diversity and giving people on the lower end of the spectrum all kinds of different choices there. So it's just an important addition I thought I'd throw in.
Yeah. Way to close it out.
Thank you very much.
What an ending. All right, a double exclamation point. That's right.
I do really want to emphasize Mayor Genong and the rest of the council as well, how much we appreciate this. It really is valuable for us to, I know it's a lot of time, but really drive to the why behind the what, and really understand some of the nuances for what you're looking to see that'll help us really refine this. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I think many of us have said throughout the process so far we're enjoying the format and the ability to engage on it. It's obviously an important document that we're building together. So yeah, kudos again to the group. Thank you for all your work on it.
Thank you.
Question for the Ledge team as I navigate closer to the guardrail here. Do we need a motion on that? This is a different... We had a recommended action of council provide feedback, which we've done.
I think if Ledge was to prefer a motion, the accepting the
This as
report and
information?
discussing for information would be appropriate.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Look for a motion to accept the report for information. Councillor Wilson.
I would move that we accept the previous report for information.
Thank you. All those in favor? Look at that. Carried. All right, that concludes the business portion. We're moving into finance. Just the one item, just the one big item. Budget 2024-26, Mr. Derricott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and if I may just take one small liberty, just having listened to the previous conversation, which I think was really encouraging from an administrative perspective to hear council's perspective on the future of our community and how we accommodate that. One of the things I would suggest, and it came out at regular intervals in that conversation, is whatever path we choose, I think it needs to be overlaid with the financial implications of that path, and certainly support Councillor Nagel's perspective that we're going to have to make some choices along that. It's not that we can't have I'll say it this way, we can have everything we decide we're willing to pay for. And so it's all available to us, but it comes with a certain set of implications that are financial in nature, which is maybe a good segue into our current topic, which is this budget. Again, I will not belabor the point here, as council has had a number of opportunities to consider the budget, and we're hopeful to see a number of motions passed. You have in front of you, in the report and in the presentation, the consolidated draft budget summary for council's consideration. Again, for reflection, the implications of the adjusted tax rate post-deliberation, leaving us with a 3.63 adjusted revenue requirement for this year's budget. As always, we feel it's really, really important not to speak about the global implications without also noting those household implications of passing a budget. The average household in Cochrane, again, could expect to see roughly $225 in annual increase, or just about $1,850 in monthly implications to their budget. A note again of just shy of $27 million in capital infrastructure investment, and noted below in the methods of funding those projects. And with that, the recommended actions that we would look for administratively were an adoption of the 2024-26 budget as presented, and then a number of schedule amendments. This is where the fees are all contained. I will note that in the third schedule amendment, it lists schedules A, B. It would also need to list Schedule I for bylaw 04-2013, an oversight on our part that we would like to see included. Again, hopeful to see support for this budget that council has spent some time with, and administration is proud to place in front of you today.
So thank you, Mr. Dercott. Just so for clarity, you're looking for in the third bullet, the third motion, Schedule B and I?
A, B, and I.
Oh, A, B, and I, okay.
That's specific to bylaw 04-2013, and Schedule I was included in your report. It was just missed in the recommendation, sorry.
Okay. Good, thank you. Councillor McFadden?
Excuse me. In regards to the 2024-2026 budget as presented, I would like to vote on the capital and the operational budget separately if we could.
Absolutely, that is something that can be done and has been done at council's discretion. So if desired, it would just be two separate motions for each budget.
Okay. In that case, I would like to move the 2024-2026 capital budget be adopted as presented. I was very satisfied with the capital budget. I think it's no secret that I've long been concerned and an advocate for catching up on our recreational infrastructure. And I saw a great deal of that in this budget, and I think it's a great success. So overall, I can support the capital budget as presented. And so I would ask that those two be split into different parts and decided at that point if that works.
Okay, I believe you've just done that by moving just the capital. So council, to be clear, we're voting just on the capital budget, and then we'll have a separate motion for the operating budget. Councillor Federico, to the capital budget.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the capital budget with the exception of the Glenbow Path paving project. I'm still not for that particular item, but I understand that that was already ruled out, but I just wanted to make it clear publicly that I'm not supporting of that one.
Councillor Nagel?
The three-part ranch house renovations are removed from that budget, correct? Or are this included in that capital budget?
They are included.
Oh, yeah, I'm opposed to the capital then, because of those three items.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Flowers?
Regarding the pathway, did we not decide we're going to look at that further? We left it in, but we're going to be looking at, do we pave it all, pave a piece of it? Do we use the grant, not use the grant? We left it up in the air, didn't we?
Yeah, so thank you through the chair to Deputy Mayor Flowers. Administration did commit to bringing that project back to council for eyes on before it proceeds, and considering a number of the concerns that were raised so that we can address those all prior to making a final determination on that project.
Counselor Wilson?
Just a clarity question. I'm in support of the capital budget. My only possible piece of concern was 1/3 of the ranch house updates, which I understand we're going to leave in. However, we're going to come back to us with further clarity for us to either continue with or axe at some point early 2024. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you through the chair to Councillor Wilson. That is correct. Similar to the pathway budget that we will share some more information, some more refined information as it becomes available prior to commencing that project.
I'm pleased to support the capital budget as recommended.
Okay, Counselor Nagel?
I'm not clear on why we would leave them in the budget and approve the budget when we're wanting more information. I would strongly encourage council to vote to remove those items from the budget until we are adequately convinced that they're necessary, and then we would decide to pay for them. And it was a large item. I think the total renovation was 1.2 million for the 3 parts.
I've got it here. It is 700,000.
Yeah, I believe the total was close to 1.2 million. I don't remember the exact number, but.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's the one above it, 1.3. Is it listed in the document? Yeah. Counselor Wilson?
So just another clarity question. My contention with Councillor Nagel's thought process there is that if we were to remove them from the capital budget, we then wouldn't have the ability to go ahead if we decide they were a useful thing to pursue. Is that correct? We would be waiting for another budget to proceed with the project?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So administration would, again, support having a mandate to proceed with those projects, noted both the pathway project and the ranch house renovations coming to council. If we were to proceed in a different direction, administration acting in good faith could bring those back before council. I believe the ranch house renovations are funded through reserve, so there's no tax implication to changing that. It adds, I think, just some additional process pieces on part of that. Again, my impression was that the project had support of the majority of council, though noting that not all council members were in favor of it.
Okay, thank you. That does help me understand that I suppose there is little utility in what we're arguing between it being a reserve. It's simply to use the money or not use the money at whatever portion we decide that. So I think the course we've charted is still correct. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else to the capital budget? Nope. Yeah, I'm in favor of the capital budget as presented as well. So with seeing no further comments, I'll call the question on the, to be clear, it is that council adopt the 24-26 capital budget as presented. All those in favor? Those opposed? That carries. Thank you. Moving through to operating. Councillor Nagel?
I will move that council approve the operational budget, but I won't be voting in favor of my own motion. I don't think that that is procedurally required. I think one is allowed to move something and then vote against it when the question is called. And the reason I'll be voting against it is I felt that 2 years ago we made an extraordinary circumstance decision to impose a large tax increase, and I was convinced at the time that it was the right decision. It was coming off of a few years of very fiscally conservative budgets, including widespread salary freezes, and during the pandemic we actually cut positions in areas that needed to be restaffed. During that time, even though we anticipated the pandemic was going to lead to an economic slowdown, it actually led to a growth boom in Cochrane, and then a bunch of inflationary pressures, and then coupled with all that, there was also some major items such as retroactive RCMP pay, and so it was really just a year where I felt that council needed to support a large tax hike, and I really did not like supporting that, but when I did that, I did it under my own personal understanding that it was going to be a one-off thing, and that following that one-off decision, council would then go back to moving very, very, very fiscally prudent budgets as we have. We often like to tout and show off that we're one of the lowest operating costs per capita in Alberta, and that didn't happen by accident. It happened by us having tough, fiscally responsible budgets. And I'd like us to get back to that. This budget that we're considering, I do not feel we have done everything we can to keep the tax rate low. I did propose a few things that would actually result in a lower tax rate. My preferred option is, and always would be, that our administration provide us with even better and smarter options to keep the taxes down. But in the absence of those options being presented to me, I put forward the option of reducing our reserve contributions by an amount equal to the 1.2 million, which I just voted against in the capital budget. And I want to provide all that background information to say that, to prove that this is not just a flippant, I'm not voting for more taxes decision. I do believe there is a path to a lower tax rate, should this council want to pursue that. And since we are not pursuing that, I am not going to be voting in favor of this operational budget. Thank you.
Councillor Padico?
I also will not be voting in favor of the operational budget. I've been fairly clear. Number one, I didn't want to see an increase greater than 3.45, but I actually think it could be under 3. I do want to say that I support the fire personnel. I think that's a good move by this council. It's difficult when you don't see enough actuals or actually detailed actuals, and numbers don't necessarily always add up. There's been quite a few people building spreadsheets in the background that shows us very clearly. We need to get better at actuals, better at breakdowns. We need to have actual KPIs. We need to actually understand what the money is going to. I have a real problem with handing over a bag of cash and saying, here you go, you do what's best, and then that information isn't relayed effectively, critically to this council. And I think I've asked lots of questions. There's 40% of this budget is tied up in other things that, or 40 million, sorry, not 40%, tied up in things that nobody can really tell me what it actually is. And I actually suggested just go back to the drawing board and figure out where you can take it out of, find it, take it out. I think that's easy. It wasn't done, so therefore I'm not voting in favor of it.
Deputy Mayor Flowers?
I am in favor of this budget. I think it keeps up with inflation, which is something we didn't do for years and years, and then we got behind. Then we had to make a huge increase to get caught up and fix some of the mistakes that we made over the years. We completely torched our community services department, and now we're rebuilding it. So I'm really happy with this. I think the number is small enough that it's inflation and it's adding some of the things we need, especially the firefighters and the safety in our community. I think we're moving in an excellent direction, and the taxpayers here expect us to provide the services that we're providing without any cuts. So I'm very happy with it.
Councillor McFadden?
Yes, thank you. I will also be voting against the budget. We had some good conversations, I felt, on where service level additions. I certainly supported the supporting of the fire department, and the adding of those officers and the various different positions to support kind of the needs of the operations. But I also support the COLA increases and maintaining those service levels. But where I struggled, the same as last year with the budget, is the budget process. My desire was to have seen, the budget being restated so that you could see expenses when they're moving between departments, to be able to see actual so we could compare, and just to be able to do that the greater level of evaluation of the budget. So that piece was frustrating and disappointing to me. The public engagement, again, not being really able to engage with some of our key partners further, including the library and affordable housing. Those type of pieces I felt were lacking and rushed. And then, as Councillor Nagla said, I felt we could have worked harder at trying to keep the tax rate down and provide options for council to evaluate, and that would be something I'd like to see in future budgets, is that ability for council to kind of see where the opportunities are to keep the tax rate down. In addition to when we're seeing the service levels or new positions that are being added to the budget, instead of just seeing the 10 or so positions that administration has agreed on, it would be great to see, here's the recommended positions within the budget, but here's, from that pool, what our B team would have maybe looked like, so that council can make those evaluations. Yeah, overall, the budget process just didn't hit it for me, and so I just cannot in good conscience vote for this budget.
Councillor Reid?
Well, I sincerely appreciate Councilor Nagel's consistent, principled, rational, reasoned support for not supporting the budget. I support the budget as presented today. However, unlike Councilor Federico, I don't think we should try to lower the tax rate on the very backs of the non-unionized staff. Besides being totally unfair to our dedicated, hardworking staff, it would only greater create disharmony, inequity, and further alienate our staff. Our staff rightfully have earned and deserve a cost of living increase, and are recommending that they be penalized. Our own staff in this way is simply wrong. Nor do I agree with Councilor Federico that we should postpone the hiring of critically necessary boots on the ground positions that the majority of council has agreed we desperately need, and to postpone that any further delays the critical initiatives and services our citizens have asked for, expect, and deserve. I think despite the kind of half-truths and fiction that some people have made in their Trump-style politics of repeating some fiction comments often enough so that somehow they think they're going to become reality, that we've done a really good job, a reasonable job and a rational job providing a conservative, effective, efficient budget that speaks to the majority of our citizens as a result of our very robust community-wide representative pre-budget public engagement and consultation, all of which council had committed to undertaking this year, and the results and the final budget clearly indicate and reflect council's commitment to listening to community and during these economic times. You know, likewise, I thought the very reason that we established the budget task force last year was to nail down all the specific data and information any or all members of council is required to come up with an approved budget, which I believe administration has done and done effectively. Yes, there is room for improvement, but I think they've done a great job. And I find myself, and I think we find ourselves, again, apparently in a similar position as we were last year. So I sincerely hope that the budget task force gets to work immediately and as soon as possible to address some of these ongoing politicized concerns. Finally, I'd like to thank administration for all their hard work and my council colleagues for coming up with a budget that I think is the lowest in the region, if not the lowest in the province. And again, truly represents the majority of what our citizens want in the way of services and recognizes the economic circumstances we find ourselves in.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. In my opinion, this is a nearly only inflationary raise with the exclusion of our fire ad. I believe this to be a lean and conservative operational budget, or I wouldn't support it. That's how I roll. The utility rate increases, I think, all represent inflationary increases in our user pay values. I'm happy to support those as well. The one criticism around the table that does find a home with me is that when we're saying $40 million of our budget is non-descriptive or partially non-descriptive, I do take that to heart. I think that's something that our budget task force is tasked to deal with in this upcoming cycle. I intend to do just that, but I don't see that as being a reason to not support the budget. I think that's something that we can improve on and will improve on in 2024. But I'm satisfied with what we have before us right now. I'll be voting in favor of it.
Councillor McFadden, back to you.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, in any of the discussions I heard from Councillor Federico, I didn't hear her suggesting a COLA cut. I think the only thing I heard was actually asking for a clarification of how much that would be, so that was a consideration point. I don't think I ever heard Councillor Federico advocating for a COLA cut to staff. I think it was just for information, so I just wanted to find that clarification of what I heard during the budget process.
Councillor Federico.
Yes, Councillor Reid, I never once suggested that we should cut COLA. I asked for what that amount would be because I think it is our job as councillors to do due diligence to find out as many different options what the cost is worth. And then I would respect everybody's opinion around this table, as I would hope you would respect mine by looking at those numbers and making a rational decision once we have it. But to not be provided the information makes it very difficult to be able to decide whether that's not even anything that I would like to pursue. I also never said that I was in favor of holding off hiring of staff. Again, it's about looking at the numbers and trying to figure out what the best option is for everybody. I would appreciate the next time that we get all the information laid out on the table, then have that wholesome discussion. I've never once said that I wanted to take away COLA. That's putting words in my mouth, and that goes out to the community like I've suggested it, and I did it.
Okay, I guess it's just my light on, and the swing vote too. Thanks, guys. Well, I will be supporting the budget as presented this evening, for many of the reasons that my colleagues have outlined, notwithstanding the current economic environment, inflation and growth pressures. And a lot of the growth pressures, I would add, I've been saying this more in the community now, because I don't think it's clear, that growth pressures that we have inherited prior to 2017. So we are dealing with a lot of the pressures that were handed to us, and I think, and taking a lot of the slings and arrows for the reality that our community is in today, based on something that we are trying to get a hold of and manage. So I believe this budget does that. It is, as you suggest, Councillor Wilson, I agree with you that it is an inflationary increase. Outside of the inflation that was added, the 3% that administration adjusted to, we're looking at a 0.63% increase in taxes. And I would preface those remarks with, obviously no one wants a tax increase. But I am not prepared to take anything away from our community at this point. And the expectations that Cochranites already have in the service levels that we're already providing. Nor am I prepared to pass on financial burden and issues to either the next council or the next generation. I think it's this group's responsibility to not hand off problems. And I'm not suggesting that council or administrations of the past have done that, but I just think we can manage the reality that we're in. And I just wanted to speak to that, again, Councillor Wilson, I agree with you that we're already running an efficient organization. I don't like the commentary that we're not. I don't like that we have this expectation or this dialogue that there's any wrongdoing here. We have lower taxes than most. We've seen charts and studies and data that provide that information. It's not just something we're touting. And I believe this is a fiscally responsible budget that had actuals presented to us. And I understand through my questions and through the 4 days that we didn't even use all of, I understand where every dollar in this budget is going. We have policies and procedures in place to ensure that dollars are spent where they're supposed to be spent. And all of those policies and procedures are updated. Even tonight, we've updated another one. So to say that there's cash missing or something going amiss, it's just not true. Council owns the bottom line at the end of the day, and we vote on everything. And the dollars that flow through here are through this and behind this bench. So again, I do agree that there is some work to be done on how it's presented, but I can get past the presentation, and I just want to say thank you to the residents that provided feedback in all of the avenues that there were, and to administration for providing an excellent draft budget document with more information, and I've said this before, than we've ever seen before, in the format that we're going to tweak. And I agree with you, Councillor Wilson, we're going to work on that. We'll come back here next year and have an even better policy document in front of us. So with that, I'm in favor of the budget, and I believe by the tally I have going here that looks like to be enough, but we shall see in a moment. I'll call the question on the 2024-26 operating budget as presented, moved by Councillor Nagel. All those in favor? Those opposed? That carries. Thank you, Council. We have a couple more, count 5 more motions that we need to continue to move through. This one is the motion that includes A, B, and I. Looking for a motion? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any discussion? Seeing any? All in favor of the amendments to Schedule A, B, and I? Those opposed? None? Oh, sorry, that's, yeah, I did that one out of order. Sorry. Okay, well, we'll go back to council approve amendments to Schedule B. Now, just B.
They're both Schedule, if I may, Mayor, Schedule B, but first bylaw 08-2018.
Okay, thank you. No, for clarity, I was talking about the third one already. Okay, so going back to this one, I need a motion, please. Councillor Reid, Those in favor of amendments to Schedule B, bylaw 08, 2018? That carries. Amendments to Schedule A and B of bylaw 04, 2013.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, that's the one you made first. So the one we would be looking for would be Schedule B of bylaw 16, 2016.
It wouldn't be the last meeting of the year if it wasn't difficult in all avenues. Okay, so that motion? Still need someone. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, all those in favor? Carried.
There was a lot of schedules and bylaws there. Thank you for.
Did we do the last
for
one?
sparing- We have not yet. We're still looking for that last
Still need service
motion.
fees. Thank you. Still got a little bit of energy left here. Someone? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. All those in favor of the service fees? Carried.
Thank you very much to council, both for supporting this budget as a whole, and also for the feedback and ongoing pursuit of improvements. And we will definitely take both of those to heart as we go forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes finance. Notices of motion, item 8. Councillor Fideko, you have a notice of motion, third-party whistleblower program and policy.
Do, and before anybody pulls out any sort of pieces of paper to do big speeches, I am not looking to debate or actually discuss this notice of motion tonight. It will come back at our first meeting in January. So just to give some clarification so people actually understand what a whistleblower program is, a whistleblower policy promotes employees, service providers, and residents' engagement by visibly demonstrating that they are participating with or a member of an organization that values integrity and accountability. A whistleblower program and policy is a framework that allows the reporting of any illegal or unethical activities within an organization without fear of retaliation. The benefits of such a program include increased transparency, compliance, morale, and trust by providing employees and service providers, as well as residents, with a safe and anonymous way to report wrongdoing. A whistleblower program promotes positive mental health by reducing the stress and anxiety that comes with possible retaliation, keeping secrets, or feeling powerless in the face of unethical behavior. So here's the recommended action, that council direct administration to investigate the process for establishing a third-party whistleblower program and policy and identify next steps for implementation, with a draft policy to be brought back to council for consideration by June 30th, 2024. A third-party whistleblower program and policy will allow for improved and accountable governance. This program will provide a safe, confidential place for all town employees, service providers, and residents to report concerns of suspected waste, wrongdoings, and issues and allegations that council has authority over. By creating a third-party body to objectively investigate and research allegations without bias or undue influence, the whistleblower program and policy will create a safe environment for all. This program and policy will also further council's desire to support open, ethical, accountable, and transparent local government. This program will be managed by a third-party committee or a team that is not formed or part of town administration, so that it remains absolutely confidential and unbiased at all times. Under this program and policy, we'll follow our updated procedural bylaw, expense reporting policies, and updated versions of our codes of conduct for all. I can't understand why somebody would not support a program like this when we talk about how transparent we are, how we want to be accountable to the people. I just think that it makes sense. I have done research in the background, which you've been provided with from a particular company. I'm not stating that that is the be-all and end-all of the company, but I just wanted to provide you with some information that I received. That particular company operates a whistleblower program for Red Deer, Edmonton, as well as Calgary, as well as many other municipalities. And you do have the cost associated with it, which I can talk about at the next meeting.
Respectfully, if I can, Mayor Janung and Council, if this motion is being postponed to January, then all discussion and debate should be retained until then.
Okay, that's a little deviation from what we're used to. You just clarify that for me again, please?
So the council, Councillor Fideko specifically said she did not want this motion discussed or debated this evening, so it should not be. She has asked that it be deferred to January, which is when that discussion should occur.
So you're just putting a notice of motion out there, okay? So then there would be no lights on, we just move on. Okay. All right, let's move to mayor's report. I got one. Happy December 11th, everyone. Few things I've been working on. The Great Trail Steering Committee, I believe, is coming back to council in the new year. We're going to be talking about the plan, the Great Trail Plan. So that's starting to come together. So hold on to your hats in the new year for that. AB Munis, I think everybody was talking about or got the surveys around the party politics in municipal government. Just wanted to give a shout out to the Bearspaw European Christmas Village if you haven't been there. It's open on the weekends, excellent fireworks show, and just if you want to get in the Christmas spirit, they've done a great job there. SLS Rec Board, just to bring council up to speed, they had a good year in 2023. Revenues exceeded expected budgets, so there's a policy to direct that extra revenue to capital expenses. So that is where that's going. And it's not to say there's a huge surplus there. I'm just saying that there's more memberships than what they had budgeted for. Also that the splash park is, there's some issues around that that the board is looking at, and administration is providing some direction to move forward with that in the future. Hopefully that'll be up and running for next season. A lot of work around the Mid-Size City Mayor's Caucus Summit, January 10th to 12th. Thank you to those of you who have registered. I believe we have 4 out of the 7 of us going. The program is looking good. We've got some good speakers lined up and some good panels that will be discussing specific issues to mid-sized cities. Over the weekend, and I'm going to be brief here, but the Stuff-A-Bus, I just wanted to have a huge shout out to Case and the Activettes. Had an opportunity with Councillor Reid to make an appearance at Stuff-A-Bus at the Canadian Tire, all the volunteers, etc., that make that such a great initiative. The Christmas spirit's alive in Cochrane. That bus was stuffed. And then the next day, on Sunday, spent some time with Mrs. Claus at Kiwanis Christmas Toy Project, where 200 families were recipients of the program to have some toys or whatever the child chose to spend their dollars on. Pretty moving to help some families shop in Walmart with the Kiwanis. Just a huge appreciation out to the Kiwanis Club of Cochrane for that. A little bit of snow we've had, and then flashback to Light Up. The Christmas initiatives around town are just so awesome. I have never been more proud to be a part of Cochrane and live here, and just want to wrap up this last mayor's report with please love where you live. We have such an amazing community doing great things, and it's just evident everywhere you look. There is no shortage of people doing and going the extra mile for their neighbors in Cochrane. And with that, I will wrap up my report for the year. Thank you. Councillor Fedeco.
On Thursday, I wrapped up my 9th EMS parade that traveled through every single community in Cochrane. And hats off to the crews from fire, especially because some of them they were out there for like 4 of the nights, it just depending on how they fell. RCMP, Municipal Enforcement, Cochrane Area Victim Services, as well as the Cochrane Activettes. And I have to tell you, I was able to go to Toyland yesterday, also dressed as Mrs. Claus, to see all the donations. And the Activettes told me, number one, this is going to be the largest number of Pampers they're going to have to hand out to our community members, as well as that if these parades did not happen, they're probably worth about 80% of the amount of donations that we collect. This year, my kids got to come with me. I got to take out Sam from Urban Casual. I got to take out one of the Activettes on the parade route, and it's heartwarming. It's something that I hope I hope it just resonates with everybody, and to all the residents, I can't thank them enough for their donations. And then, yes, I was dressed as Mrs. Claus for, I think, the 5th year in a row. Just getting a little older looking. I'm starting to look like Mrs. Claus with gray hair and everything else. But it was a nice, heartwarming event for all the kids for the kids and families in need.
Councillor Reid?
In addition to the shout out for Stuff the Bus, the mayor might want to speak to the owner of the Canadian Tire and just the contribution that Canadian Tire provides to, I don't know if you want to, Jeff, talk about that, what the employees did, what the owner of that store has done in terms of being able to effectively help fill that bus in addition to the members of the community. I don't know if you want to.
I think you're doing it.
It was marvelous just to see what that store has contributed to. And I don't know what it's done over the last couple of years, but I suspect it's just the same. And while we have a lot of businesses who obviously contribute to our community, that was exceptional in my opinion. I just wanted to shout that out.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, it's hard to believe we're at the last meeting of the year. And it's been a busy one. Yeah, and the last couple of weeks have been pretty busy as well. The Parks and Recreation Committee work is underway. I've been working with administration and really enjoying my time with them as we kind of map out what the potential work plan of the Parks and Rec Committee is going to be next year. So I really appreciate staff support with that. It's been good. And then my next week and part of staff's next week is doing a whole bunch of interviews. Councillor Nagel, you're welcome to join us on those if you would like. Anyhow, so I'm excited about what the new year is going to look like for the Parks and Recreation Committee. I'm not sure that everyone knows, but I am on an Alberta Municipalities Association committee, the Economic Strategy Council, I can't remember what it's called. Anyhow, their Economic Strategy Committee. And it was really fascinating. I will pass on some of the information from that meeting. We did get an hour with Minister Jones, who's the Minister of Jobs, Economy and Trade. And a great deal of that presentation and discussion was the forecast by the province that over the next 10 to 15 years, they really are experiencing or forecasting that we're going to have a great deal of labor shortages and how different strategies that are going to be put in place to try to address that. So with that population boom comes the housing crisis, comes the need to fill jobs. So anyhow, it was a fascinating meeting and working with some really great people. And then switching gears a little bit, I was at the farmers market down at Spray Lake, and that group always puts on an amazing farmers market. And just like the Chamber of Commerce's trade show, this is kind of one of those calendar events for me that really does feel like Christmas when you get to go to the Christmas market. And I think they said they had 7,000 people at the farmers market, so it was a hugely bustling day, and I got some Christmas shopping done. And then, yeah, just keeping in the Christmas spirit. It's great to get out and see the Christmas lights downtown, and starting to feel a little bit festive now that we're wrapping up our council work, I guess. So, and yeah, and Merry Christmas to our hardworking team and all of your teams. I really appreciate all the work you do for us throughout the year. And to my colleagues, I appreciate all your hard work as well, even when we disagree. So, Merry Christmas, and that wraps up my report.
Councillor Nagel.
Just wanted to close the loop on something I brought up a year ago. A year ago, I think I said I was probably going to be donating my raise from 2023 to some local charity. And I did actually do that. I wasn't sure if I should talk about it publicly because it feels like when you talk about charity, it like undoes the charity because it kind of seems self-serving. But just to close the loop, I did, because I guess I ultimately decided while listening to you guys here that if I don't say anything about it, it seems like I just kind of skirted on my commitment and didn't do anything. But I did ultimately go and buy a big pile of grocery gift cards that I'm donating to struggling families through my church this Christmas.
Good for you. Deputy Mayor.
We appreciate hearing about that because we remember you saying you were donating. You're not the only one that has mentioned it. I too wanted to talk about the farmers market. It was fabulous on the weekend, and a shout out to the organizers and the participants. I had family here from Ontario, and they couldn't believe the size of it and the quality of the things that were being sold. So kudos to them, and happy holidays to everyone.
Okay. It's almost a wrap. I just wanted to end before we adjourn by saying 2023 has been quite the year, full of challenges, full of opportunities, and lots of great work. Appreciate, as Councilor McFadden has said, everybody's efforts, administratively, council-wise. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, happy New Year. I hope you find some time to collect your thoughts, have some time with family or loved ones, and come back in the new year rejuvenated and ready for more. With that, let's wrap on the meeting.